Seo Jae-hyun's signature was halfway to the contract when Zara Carter slid the folded paper beneath his folder. The Shilla Hotel's grand ballroom vibrated with applause. 400 investors, 12 television cameras, the Minister of Trade standing 3 feet away with champagne raised. Jae-hyun had just announced a $4.2 billion expansion into European logistics, the kind of deal that made headlines in 3 languages and cemented legacies. His uncle, Seo Myung-ho, stood near the podium with that practiced smile, hands clasped like a proud patriarch, gold cufflinks catching the chandelier light. Everyone saw triumph. Zara saw the trap closing. She'd been undercover for 93 days, embedded as a senior consultant for Hanseong Audit, the firm that validated every number in that glossy presentation. Her earpiece had been silent all evening, until 30 seconds ago, when her handler's voice cut through the Mozart. Board votes dismissal at 23 Hwang. Press leak queued for 23:15. Fabricated evidence uploaded. Target neutralized before midnight. Protocol was crystal. Observe, document, do not interfere. Let the pieces fall, collect the wreckage for prosecution later. She'd followed that protocol in Singapore, in Mumbai, in Sao Paulo. Watched men in expensive suits walk into carefully constructed traps, their lives dismantled by conspiracies they never saw coming. But 3 months of tracking Seo Jae-hyun's financial trail had revealed something her superiors refused to acknowledge. The numbers didn't point to him. Every doctored invoice, every ghost transaction, every embezzled billion, they all led to a shell subsidiary called Baek Ho Investments, registered 8 years ago under the authority of the senior advisor currently beaming at the cameras. Zara's father had been destroyed by men like that. Men who smiled at charity galas while burning others' lives for profit. So when Jae-hyun set down his champagne and reached for the Mont Blanc pen, his grandfather's pen, she'd learned, the one he carried like a weight, she made a choice that would end her career, or rewrite everything. She moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, charcoal dress and neutral expression, the kind of consultant who blended into corporate backdrops like expensive wallpaper. His assistant had stepped away to coordinate media photos. Security was focused on the perimeter. She had a 3-second window. Her hand brushed his as she repositioned a stack of documents. The paper disappeared under his folder. She was already walking away when his fingers found it. Jae-hyun opened it below the table's edge, hidden behind a water glass. Black ink, firm handwriting, English. You've been betrayed. Meet me in the back. His pulse spiked. He scanned the room. Hundreds of faces, none looking directly at him, everyone performing their role in the theater of corporate success. Uncle Myung-ho raised his glass in a silent toast from across the room. The minister laughed at someone's joke. Flash photography turned the moment into something that would live forever in business magazines. But the note in his hand felt like a lit fuse. He stood, buttoned his jacket with the kind of precision Harvard Business School drilled into your muscle memory, and excused himself with a polite bow. Urgent call from the Berlin office. Time zones, you understand. Smooth smile. Apologetic gesture. He was a master of this performance. The service corridor behind the ballroom was empty. White walls and industrial lighting. The bones of luxury stripped bare. Zara stood 20 feet away, arms crossed, leather briefcase at her feet, the worn brown one she'd carried since her first investigation, back when she still believed the system punished the guilty. You have 2 minutes to decide if you trust me, she said, voice low and direct. Or you can go back out there and wait for your world to collapse at exactly 11 o'clock tonight. Jae-hyun stopped 3 steps away, close enough to see she wasn't bluffing, far enough to run if this was a different kind of trap. Who are you? Someone who's been tracking your company's financials for 3 months. Someone who knows the board is voting on your dismissal in... She checked her watch. 1 hour and 40 minutes. Someone who knows the press release is already written, the evidence already planted, and your uncle is the one who built the entire trap you're about to walk into. His face didn't change. 14 years in boardrooms had taught him that. But his knuckles whitened around the note. Why would you tell me this? Because the numbers don't lie, Mr. Seo. And for 3 months, they've been telling me you're not the criminal everyone wants you to be. She took 1 step closer, close enough that he could see the small scar on her wrist. the exhaustion behind her professional mask, the certainty of someone who'd made an irreversible choice. Your uncle created a shell company 8 years ago using your grandfather's nickname, Black Hoe Investments. He's been siphoning billions through it, and every transaction is logged under credentials stolen from your executive account. Jae-hyun's breath caught. Baek Ho, the White Tiger. His grandfather's name in the independence movement. The name that built the empire. The name that was supposed to mean something. The vote happens in the executive conference room at 11. Zara continued. 7 board members. Your uncle controls 4 of them. The evidence will be presented by CFO Kim Dong-wook. Financial statements, emails, transfer authorizations, all with your digital signature. By 11:15, every major outlet in Seoul will have the story. By midnight, you'll be finished. He searched her face for the angle, the leverage, the hidden price. In his world, nobody gave information for free. What do you want? I want the truth, she said simply. And I want to stop the man who's been using your name to rob your own company blind for almost a decade. She bent down, opened her briefcase, pulled out a slim folder, extended it to him. This is everything I have so far. It's not enough to prove it in court, not yet. But it's enough to show you I'm not lying. Jae-hyun took the folder, flipped it open. Saw transaction records, shell company registrations, authentication logs that showed his credentials used from IP addresses he'd never accessed, timestamps that placed him in Berlin while his signature approved transfers in Seoul. His uncle's careful, patient architecture of betrayal laid bare in black and white. When he looked up, Zara was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not pity, not triumph, something closer to recognition. Like she'd seen this moment before, lived through it from a different angle. If I go back out there, he said quietly, and pretend I don't know any of this, then you have until 11 o'clock to decide whether you're going to let them win, Zara finished, or whether you're ready to fight back. The door to the ballroom opened behind him. Voices spilled out, someone looking for him, wondering where the CEO had gone. The speeches weren't finished. The photographs weren't complete. Jae-hyun looked at the woman who just detonated his life with a handwritten note. What's your name? Zara Carter. And before you ask, yes, I'm the enemy. Or at least I was supposed to be. She picked up her briefcase. But it turns out I'm terrible at following orders when the orders are wrong. That makes 2 of us, Jae-hyun said. Then he turned and walked back into the ballroom, folder hidden inside his jacket, face composed into the mask of a man who had everything under control. But his mind was already 3 moves ahead, calculating exits, cataloging allies, preparing for a war he hadn't seen coming. Behind him, in the empty corridor, Zara Carter checked her phone. 3 missed calls from her handler. A text. Carter, report. Now. She turned off her phone and walked the other direction. If you've ever been in a room full of people and realized you're the only one who doesn't know the trap is closing, or worse, if you've ever been the trap, you understand what happens next. Subscribe so you don't miss how Zara and Jae-hyun turn betrayal into a weapon, and stay for the moment when trust becomes the most dangerous thing either of them has ever risked. Jae-hyun returned to his apartment at 22:47, 13 minutes before his professional execution. The penthouse overlooked the Han River, floor-to-ceiling glass that turned Seoul into a living painting of lights and ambition. He'd bought it with his first CEO bonus, back when he still thought controlling the company meant controlling his fate. Now the view felt like a countdown. How much longer until this belonged to someone else, until his name became synonymous with scandal instead of strategy? He spread Zara's folder across the dining table. Transaction records, IP logs, authentication timestamps. Every piece of evidence meticulously organized, annotated in small handwriting that betrayed an obsessive attention to detail. His phone buzzed. Uncle Myung-ho. Excellent work tonight, Jae-hyun. Your grandfather would be proud. Get some rest. Big day tomorrow. The audacity of it struck him like a physical blow. His uncle, texting paternal encouragement while preparing to destroy him he checked his watch. 11 minutes. Another buzz. This one from Mrs. Hong, his executive secretary for the past 12 years. Sir, the board has called an emergency session. They did not inform me of the agenda. I thought you should know. At least someone was still loyal, or at least loyal enough to send a warning. Jae-hyun poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey. The 18-year Glenfiddich his father used to drink before the stress killed him at 53. He'd always thought the company was worth dying for. Now he wondered if it was worth surviving for. His laptop chimed. An alert from the executive server. Someone had just uploaded a new folder to the board's shared drive. CEO Financial Review, urgent. He accessed it remotely, using the security backdoor his IT specialist had installed 3 years ago for exactly this kind of situation. The folder opened to reveal a PowerPoint presentation. 63 slides, everyone a carefully constructed lie. Slide 12, his signature on transfer orders he'd never signed. Slide 28, emails from his account he'd never written. Slide 45, a photograph of him at a restaurant in Gangnam, captioned, "Meeting with Beck Ho Investments representative." Except he'd never been to that restaurant, never met that person. Slide 61, a recommendation for immediate termination to preserve company integrity and shareholder value. The presentation was flawless. If he hadn't been holding Zara's folder, if she hadn't given him the one piece of information that reframed everything, he would have looked guilty even to himself. At 23:03, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Yes. Did you look at the evidence? Zara's voice, steady and low. How did you get this number? I've had it for 2 months, Mr. SEO. I've had a lot of things. The question is whether you're ready to use what I'm giving you. A pause. The vote just started. You have about 15 minutes before it's official. Jae-hyun moved to the window, watched the city lights blur in the glass. What do you suggest I do? Walk into that meeting and accuse my uncle based on a folder from a woman I met 30 minutes ago? No, Zara said. I suggest you do what I'm doing right now. Buy time, ask the right questions, and make them prove their case before you accept guilt. Call an emergency board session for tomorrow morning. Invoke your right to review all evidence before any termination vote. Make them go on record. They'll still have the evidence. Fabricated evidence has seams, Mr. SEO. We just need to find them. Her voice softened slightly, a crack in the professional armor. I know what it's like to be set up by people you trusted. I know how it feels to realize the system is rigged, but you're not powerless yet. You're just outnumbered. There's a difference. He closed his eyes. Thought about his grandfather, who'd built the company with his bare hands after the war, who'd used the White Tiger name because he believed in courage over cunning. Thought about his mother, who died trying to hold the family together when the uncles started circling like vultures. Thought about every employee who'd ever trusted that the SEO name meant something beyond profit margins. If I fight this, he said quietly, it won't just be a vote. It'll be war. Then it's a good thing you just recruited someone who knows how to fight wars, Zara replied. Check your email. I just sent you a draft response to the board. Legal language, procedural grounds, nothing they can dismiss as emotional. Use it or don't. But decide fast. The call ended. Jae-hyun opened his email. The draft was there, time-stamped 2309, 3 paragraphs of precisely calibrated corporate language that invoked shareholder agreements, fiduciary duty clauses, and board governance protocols. It was brilliant. Not a denial, not an accusation, just a demand for due process that couldn't be legally ignored. He read it twice, modified 2 sentences, and sent it to all 7 board members at 2314. At 2316, his phone exploded with responses. Uncle Myung-ho. Jae-hyun, this is unnecessary. We're trying to protect the company. CFO Kim. Procedural delays only make things worse. Board member number 3. We should allow review. This is within his rights. Board member number 5. Agreed. 24-hour postponement. The vote was suspended. Jae-hyun exhaled, a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He'd bought time. Barely, expensively, but time nonetheless. His phone rang again. Zara. Congratulations, she said. You just survived the first assassination attempt. Tomorrow they'll try again, and they'll be angrier, which means we have about 12 hours to find the seams in their case. We? Jae-hyun asked. I told you, Mr. SEO, I'm terrible at following orders. My superiors wanted me to watch you burn. Instead, I'm going to help you burn the people who deserve it. A pause, and then softer. Meet me tomorrow, 6 a.m., Namsan Tower observation deck. Bring your grandfather's pen. We're going to need all the symbolic weight we can get. How did you know about the pen? I've been studying you for 3 months. I know you take your coffee black. I know you never wear the same tie twice in a week. And I know you touch that pen every time you're making a decision that scares you. Her voice carried the faint edge of a smile. See you at sunrise, Mr. SEO. And for what it's worth, your grandfather would be proud you didn't roll over. The call ended before he could respond. Jae-hyun stood in his empty penthouse, holding his phone, staring at his reflection in the glass. The city stretched out below him, indifferent and beautiful, and full of people who'd read about his downfall in tomorrow's news. Except tomorrow's news was going to have to wait. He opened his contacts, found Mrs. Hong's number, and typed, I need the 1987 archives pulled. Everything related to company founding and initial board structure, before anyone else gets to them. Her response came in seconds. Consider it done, sir. And sir, I'm glad you're fighting back. At 23:47, Jae-hyun finally allowed himself to feel it. The rage, the betrayal, the cold clarity of a man who just realized his entire life had been a stage set for someone else's play. But stages could be rebuilt. Plays could be rewritten. And he just found a co-author who knew how to burn scripts down to ash. Namsan Tower at 6 a.m. was a study in contrasts. Tourists absent, security minimal, the city below just beginning to stir under a sky caught between night and dawn. Zara stood at the northern observation point, coffee in hand, leather briefcase at her feet. She'd been awake for 31 hours, running scenarios, cross-referencing files, preparing for the conversation that would either save Jae-hyun or bury them both. He arrived at 6:04, 4 minutes late, which told her he'd been debating whether to come at all. Navy suit, no tie, the Mont Blanc pen clipped to his jacket pocket like a talisman. His eyes carried the specific exhaustion of someone who'd spent the night staring at evidence of their own destruction. You look terrible, Zara said by way of greeting. You look like you haven't slept in 2 days, Jae-hyun countered. 3, actually. Insomnia is an occupational hazard in my line of work. She handed him a second coffee cup. Black, no sugar. The way she knew he took it. We should start with what you found after I called. He took the coffee, surprised by the gesture. The board presentation. 63 slides, all designed to make me look like I've been embezzling since I took over as CEO 3 years ago. The evidence is impressive. If I didn't know it was fabricated, I'd convict myself. That's the point. Your uncle has had 8 years to build this case. Every transaction carefully timed, every document meticulously forged. He's not just framing you, he's creating a perfect historical narrative where you're the villain and he's the hero who exposes you. Jae-hyun looked out at the city, the Han River cutting through it like a silver vein. Why? He's wealthy, powerful, respected. What does destroying me gain him? Total control, Zara said bluntly. Right now, you're the CEO. But he's been the real power behind the throne since your mother died. Every major decision flows through him. Every board vote requires his approval. But you're getting older, more confident, starting to question his advice. He can feel his influence slipping, so he's removing you before you remove him. And the billions he's stolen? Insurance. Once you're gone and he installs a puppet CEO, probably his son, your cousin Seo Min-jun, he'll have unlimited access to company funds with no one to question him. He'll bleed the company dry over the next decade, then retire to a villa in Switzerland with more money than he could spend in 5 lifetimes. The casual brutality of it settled over them. This wasn't crime born of desperation. It was crime as long-term investment strategy. Jae-hyun turned to face her fully. You said you've been investigating me for 3 months. Who sent you? Zara had known this question was coming. had rehearsed the answer. Still hesitated. I work for an international task force. Corporate corruption, money laundering, asset recovery. We target high-level executives in conglomerates suspected of illegal activity. Your company was flagged 6 months ago. I was sent to build a case. And you built one against me. I built one that looked like it was against you, Zara corrected. The initial evidence pointed to you because that's what your uncle designed it to do. But I'm good at my job, Mr. SEO. Really good. And after 2 months, I started noticing inconsistencies. Transactions that happened when you were on record in other countries. Authorizations that used your credentials but didn't match your linguistic patterns. Meetings you supposedly attended that conflicted with your verified schedule. So you went digging. I went digging, and I found Baek Ho Investments. Found the incorporation documents filed 8 years ago, 3 months after your mother's funeral. Found the initial capital transfer, $50 billion, authorized by your uncle using temporary emergency powers. The board granted him during the transition period. Found 218 subsequent transactions, all carefully disguised as legitimate operational expenses. She opened her briefcase, pulled out a tablet, handed it to him. This is the real financial trail. Not the one they showed the board, the actual movement of money. Your uncle created an entire shadow economy inside your company, and he's been using it like a personal bank account for almost a decade. Jae-hyun scrolled through the data, his expression hardening with each screen. This is billions. He's taken billions. $4.7 billion to be precise, about $3.5 billion USD. Enough to destroy the company if it ever came out. Which is exactly why he needs you to take the fall. If you're the criminal, he's the hero. If he's exposed, the entire family legacy collapses. And your task force knows about this? Zara's jaw tightened. My task force wants a conviction. They don't particularly care if it's the right conviction. You're the CEO, the public face, the easy target. Going after your uncle means a longer investigation, more resources, political complications. He's connected to people in the Blue House, people in the prosecutor's office. It's messier. So they told me to close the case, hand over the evidence, and let the Korean authorities handle the arrest. But you didn't. But I didn't. She met his eyes. My father was CFO of a manufacturing company in Detroit. When I was 19, he was framed by the CEO for embezzlement. Same playbook as your uncle, same shadow companies, same fake evidence. He fought for 2 years, lost everything. The stress killed him before the trial even ended. Her voice stayed level, but her fingers touched the scar on her wrist, that unconscious gesture of old trauma. I became an investigator because I wanted to stop men like that CEO. But somewhere along the way, my organization started caring more about statistics than truth. I can't... She stopped, recalibrated. I won't be part of destroying an innocent person just because it's convenient. The observation deck was silent, except for the wind. Below them, Seoul was waking up. Traffic beginning to flow, lights flickering on in office towers, the machinery of empire grinding back to life. If you help me, Jae-hyun said carefully, your career is over. It's already over. I ignored a direct order last night. By now, my superiors know I've gone rogue. I have maybe 48 hours before they pull my credentials and issue a recall. She took the tablet back, closed the briefcase. So we need to move fast. Find the seams in your uncle's case, expose the real financial trail, and force the board to see the truth before he can bury it. And if we fail, then you lose your company, I lose my career, and your uncle retires to Switzerland a very wealthy man. Zara allowed herself a thin smile. But I don't plan on failing, Mr. SEO. He studied her. This woman who'd appeared out of nowhere with a note and a folder and a willingness to detonate her own life for a principle. In his world, people didn't do that. In his world, everyone had an angle. Why do I feel like I just agreed to jump off a cliff with someone I don't know? Because that's exactly what you did, Zara said. But at least now you're jumping towards something instead of falling into a trap. She checked her watch. The board meeting is in 6 hours. We need to find Mrs. Hong, get those 1987 archives, and figure out exactly when your uncle started building his shadow empire. Mrs. Hong said she'd pull them last night. Then let's hope she's as loyal as you think she is, Zara said. Because right now, she's the only person in your company we can trust. They left the observation deck together, two people who'd just declared war on an empire, armed with nothing but evidence and anger and the fragile beginning of something that might have been trust. Behind them, the sun crested the horizon, turning the Han River gold. It looked like hope if you squinted, or a countdown if you didn't. Mrs. Hong's office was a study in controlled discretion, exactly what you'd expect from a woman who'd spent 34 years managing the private affairs of 3 generations of CEO family executives. She was waiting when Zara and Jae-hyun arrived at 7:15 a.m., a pot of green tea already steeping, 3 cups arranged on the low table. The yellowed craft envelope sat between them like a bomb with a very long fuse. Ms. Carter, Mrs. Hong said with a precise bow, her gray hair impeccably cut, reading glasses hanging from a silver chain. Mr. SEO has told me you're trying to help him. I hope that's true, because what I'm about to show you will either save this company or destroy what's left of it. You know who I am? Zara asked, surprised. I've been the executive secretary here since before you were born, Ms. Carter. I know everyone who enters this building, and I make it my business to understand why they're here. She poured tea with steady hands. I've known you were investigating us since your second week. I've been monitoring your activities. Jae-hyun set down his cup. Mrs. Hong, why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't know if you were part of the problem or the solution, sir. Her expression softened. Your grandfather hired me in 1991. I watched him build this company with principles. Flawed principles, perhaps, shaped by war and survival, but principles nonetheless. I watched your father try to maintain them. I watched your mother fight to preserve them when the family tried to tear itself apart after your father died. She touched the envelope. And I watched your uncle slowly, methodically, betray everything they built. The office fell silent except for the distant hum of Seoul traffic. Mrs. Hong opened the envelope. Inside were documents that looked like they'd been hidden for decades. Incorporation papers, board minutes, financial authorizations, all on paper that had yellowed with time and secret-keeping. This, she said, laying out the first document, is the original incorporation agreement for what eventually became the CO Group, 1987. Your grandfather, 2 business partners, and your uncle, then a junior executive barely 30 years old. Zara leaned forward. The document was in Korean, but she'd learned to read corporate paperwork in 8 languages during her investigations. The signatures at the bottom were clear. 4 men committing to build something lasting. What happened to the other 2 partners? Jae-hyun asked. One died in a car accident in 1989, Mrs. Hong said quietly. The other was bought out in 1992 under circumstances I've always found convenient. By 1995, it was just your grandfather and your uncle running the company. And you think the accident wasn't an accident? I think your uncle is a patient man, Mr. SEO. Patient and thorough. She laid out another document, a transfer authorization from 1996. This is when your grandfather moved $10 billion into a strategic development fund meant to expand into semiconductors. The fund was managed jointly by your grandfather and your uncle. 6 months later, your grandfather had his first stroke. Your uncle had sole signing authority. And the fund? Disappeared into a corporate restructuring 2 years later. The paperwork claims it was reinvested in operational expenses. But I was managing the books then. The numbers never matched. I raised questions. Your uncle explained it was an accounting error. I was young, inexperienced, I believed him. Zara's mind was racing, connecting threads. He's been doing this for almost 30 years, building a system, testing boundaries, learning how to move money invisibly. And learning how to remove anyone who questioned him, Mrs. Hong added. Your father started asking uncomfortable questions in 2009. He died of a heart attack in 2010. Stress, the doctor said. Your mother tried to restructure the board in 2015 to reduce your uncle's control. She died in 2016. Exhaustion, they said. Also stress. The implication hung in the air like smoke from a distant fire. You think he killed them? Jae-hyun said, his voice flat. I think powerful people don't need literal murder when there are so many other ways to stop a heart, Mr. SEO. Pressure, manipulation, strategic crises timed to maximize psychological impact. Your mother spent her last year fighting battles on 6 fronts: the board, the media, rival families trying to force a merger, activist shareholders. Your uncle was her closest advisor through all of it. He knew every weakness, every pressure point. Zara pulled out her tablet, started cross-referencing dates. If we can prove he's been embezzling since the 1990s, the current frame-up becomes part of a larger pattern. It's not just one crime, it's a criminal enterprise spanning decades. But proving it means accessing records that have been sealed, destroyed, or buried under 30 years of legitimate business activity, Mrs. Hong said. I've kept what I could. Copies of documents that seemed suspicious, notes from meetings that felt wrong. But I'm a secretary, not a forensic accountant. I don't have the skills to connect these fragments into a prosecutable case. I do, Zara said. If you give me access to the company's historical financial databases, I can't. Your credentials were revoked this morning. Mrs. Hong turned her computer screen around. An internal memo, time-stamped 6:47 a.m. from the IT department. Per board directive, audit access for Hanseong Consulting personnel terminated effective immediately. Jae-hyun swore quietly. They're sealing the doors. If you can't access the systems, then we find another way in, Zara interrupted. She looked at Mrs. Hong. Who in your IT department is loyal to Mr. SEO and not to his uncle? Mrs. Hong considered. Park Jin-woo, senior systems architect. He's worked here for 12 years. His daughter has a scholarship funded by the company's educational foundation. One of the programs your mother established, Mr. SEO. He remembers that. Can you get him here without raising alarms? I can have him here in 20 minutes, Mrs. Hong said, already reaching for her phone. Jae-hyun stood, moved to the window. The company headquarters spread out below, 43 floors of glass and steel and ambition. Somewhere in this building, his uncle was preparing for the board meeting, confident that by noon, the CEO position would be vacant and the investigation would be closed. Mrs. Hong, he said without turning around, why are you doing this? You could have stayed silent, kept your pension, retired safely. Why risk everything now? She was quiet for a long moment. Because I'm 68 years old, Mr. CO. And I've spent 40 years watching good people destroyed by men who smile at charity galas while burning others' lives for profit. I told myself I was powerless. Told myself I was just following orders. Told myself that survival required silence. She touched the envelope again. That yellowed repository of buried truth. But I'm tired of silence. And I'm tired of watching the wrong people win simply because the right people are too afraid to fight. Zara felt something crack open in her chest. Recognition, solidarity, the shared exhaustion of people who'd stayed quiet too long and were finally ready to scream. Then let's make sure they hear us, she said. Mrs. Hong made the call. Park Jin-woo arrived 18 minutes later. Mid-40s, nervous energy, the kind of technical genius who preferred servers to people. He listened to the situation with growing alarm, looked at the documents Mrs. Hong had preserved, and finally nodded. I can get you into the historical database through a maintenance backdoor, he said. But if anyone checks the access logs, they'll know someone was digging. You'll have maybe 4 hours before IT security notices and locks everything down. 4 hours is enough, Zara said. I just need to pull transaction records for Beck Ho Investments and cross-reference them with official company reports from the past 8 years. Once we have the parallel records, we can show the board exactly where the money went. And if they don't believe us? Jae-hyun asked. Then we go public, Zara said flatly. Media, prosecutors, shareholder lawsuits, every weapon we have. Your uncle is betting on silence and institutional protection. We break that bet by making the truth too loud to ignore. Park Jin-woo set up his laptop, bypassed 3 security protocols, and opened a window into the company's financial soul. You're in. Clock starts now. Zara's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling files, running algorithms, building the case that would either destroy Seo Myung-ho or get them all killed. And somewhere on the executive floor, a phone buzzed with an alert. Unauthorized database access detected. Source unknown. The countdown had begun. The USB drive had been left on Jae-hyun's car windshield sometime between midnight and 6 a.m. Black plastic, no markings. The kind of anonymous digital grenade that changes wars. He'd found it when returning from Namsan Tower, after the meeting with Zara and Mrs. Hong. A single file on the drive, labeled only, "Listen." Now, at 9:30 a.m., in a borrowed office 3 floors below his usual executive suite, Jae-hyun plugged the drive into his laptop, while Zara watched over his shoulder. The audio file played through tinny laptop speakers, a recording of a meeting, voices he recognized immediately. Uncle Myung-ho. Move up the timeline. He's asking questions, getting suspicious. We need him gone before the European deal closes. CFO Kim Dong-wook. The evidence is ready. I've seeded the transactions across 18 months. No single red flag, just a pattern of small irregularities that build to a clear case of embezzlement. For Myung-ho. And the board? Kim. 4 confirmed votes. Lee Hwa-young's father is still uncommitted. Family loyalty, concerns about public perception. But if we leak the affair rumors... Myung-ho. Do it. Make it ugly. A Chaebol CEO sleeping with a foreign consultant while embezzling company funds? The media will crucify him before we even present the evidence. Laughter. The clink of glasses. Then static and silence. It cuts off, Jae-hyun said, rewinding. Right when they're about to discuss something else. Who sent this? Someone who wants you to know what's happening but isn't ready to show their face. Zara said grimly. An ally, a whistleblower, or someone playing a deeper game. Mrs. Hong? Possible. But she doesn't have access to your uncle's private meetings. This was recorded recently. You can hear traffic in the background, car horns. I'd guess somewhere in Gangnam, private room, high-end restaurant. She pulled out her tablet, started running audio analysis. If I can isolate the background sounds, match them to specific locations. Jae-hyun's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The affair rumors go live in 30 minutes. Prepare. He showed Zara the screen. Her expression darkened. They're accelerating. Probably because you delayed last night's vote. They know you're fighting back, so they're hitting harder. Can we counter it? Not without proving the affair is fabricated, which means revealing I'm not actually a consultant, which exposes my investigation, which gives your uncle ammunition to discredit everything we've found. She ran a hand through her short curly hair, frustration radiating. It's brilliant, tactically. They use the truth. We have been meeting secretly. We are working together, and twist it into a weapon. The office door opened. Mrs. Hong entered, face pale. Sir, the rumor has already started. One of the board members just called. He's heard from a reliable source that you've been having an inappropriate relationship with an audit consultant. He wanted to give you a chance to clarify before the board meeting. Which board member? Jae-hyun asked. Lee Sang-min, Hwa-young's father. Zara stood. He's the undecided vote your uncle mentioned. If he thinks Jae-hyun is embroiled in a sex scandal on top of embezzlement charges, he'll vote for dismissal to distance his family from the fallout. So we lose the vote. Unless we give him a reason to doubt the narrative, Zara said. Mrs. Hong, can you arrange a meeting between Mr. SEO and Director Lee before the board session? Something private, off the record? Mrs. Hong checked her phone. The board meeting is at noon. Director Lee is scheduled to arrive at 11:30. I could intercept him, arrange a brief conversation in the executive lounge. 5 minutes, maximum. That's all we need, Zara said. She turned to Jae-hyun. You're going to tell him the truth, not all of it, but enough. That your uncle is framing you, that the affair rumors are part of the setup, that you're fighting for the company your grandfather built. And if he doesn't believe me, then we're exactly where we'd be if we did nothing, Zara replied. But if he's even slightly doubtful, if his loyalty to your family's legacy outweighs his fear of scandal, he might abstain from voting. That's all we need. Delay, doubt, time to build a stronger case. Jae-hyun looked at Mrs. Hong. Can Park Jin-woo pull the financial records before the meeting? He's been working for 3 hours straight. Mrs. Hong said. He says he's found 23 transactions that don't match the official reports. Money moving from operational accounts into Bioco investments, then disappearing into overseas subsidiaries. But compiling it into a presentable format will take at least another 2 hours. We don't have 2 hours, Jae-hyun said. Then we present what we have and promise the rest is coming, Zara said. Park can project the raw data onto the meeting screen. It won't be pretty, but it'll be real. Sometimes truth doesn't need polish. It just needs to exist. The laptop beeped. An alert from Jae-hyun's corporate email. A message from his uncle, sent to all board members. Subject: additional concerns regarding CEO conduct. Dear board members, it has come to my attention that certain personal conduct issues have emerged alongside the financial irregularities under review. While I take no pleasure in raising these concerns, the integrity of our institution demands complete transparency. The email went on for 3 paragraphs, each one carefully phrased to sound reluctant, while systematically destroying Jae-hyun's reputation. Attached were 2 photographs, Jae-hyun and Zara, leaving the Shilla Hotel after the gala, and another from this morning at Namsan Tower, taken from a distance but clear enough to imply intimacy. He's had us followed, Jae-hyun said quietly. Of course he has, Zara replied. The question is whether he knows I'm an investigator or just thinks I'm a convenient scandal. She studied the photos. These were taken by a professional. Good angles, context that suggests romance without being explicit. Your uncle is building a narrative where you're not just a criminal, you're a liability. Weak, emotional, compromised. So we shatter the narrative, Jae-hyun said, a new edge in his voice. Mrs. Hong, arrange the meeting with Director Lee. Tell him I want 5 minutes to discuss family matters before the board session. He won't refuse. That's how our world works. Mrs. Hong nodded and left. Zara replayed the audio file, listening to the cut-off end. There's something else on this recording. Something they were about to discuss when it cuts to static. If we can recover those last few seconds. Can you? Maybe. I know someone at the forensic audio lab in Uedo. If I can get them the file without my superiors knowing. She stopped. Her phone was ringing. Handler ID. She answered. Carter. The voice on the other end was cold. You have 12 hours to return to base or we issue a warrant for obstruction of justice. You've ignored 3 direct recalls. This is your last warning. Understood, Zara said, and hung up. Jae-hyun looked at her. You have 12 hours. Then let's make them count, Zara said. She copied the audio file, attached it to an encrypted email, sent it to her contact with the subject line. Emergency. Need restoration ASAP. We'll explain later. A response came in 30 seconds. You're in trouble, aren't you? Always, Zara typed back. Can you do it? 2 hours, maybe 3. And Carter? Whatever this is, be careful. Zara closed her laptop. We're running out of time, out of allies, and out of safe moves. Then it's a good thing we're not trying to play it safe, Jae-hyun said. At 11:00 a.m., Lee Sang-min arrived for his private conversation with the CEO who might be a criminal, might be a victim, or might just be a man about to lose everything for crimes he never committed. The clock was ticking louder now, and somewhere in the building, CFO Kim Dong-wook was deleting files, covering tracks, preparing his own escape route, because even accomplices know when the ship is sinking. Director Lee Sang-min was a man built from old-world Korean business values, rigid hierarchy, family honor, the unspoken belief that preserving reputation mattered more than uncovering truth. He sat across from Jae-hyun in the executive lounge, a room designed for quiet power plays, leather chairs, and soundproofed walls. His expression was carefully neutral, but his posture betrayed discomfort. This meeting was a courtesy, not a conversation he wanted to have. Thank you for seeing me, Director Lee, Jae-hyun began, keeping his voice steady. I know you've heard certain rumors. I want to address them directly before the board meets. Lee nodded slightly. I appreciate directness, Mr. SEO. These are serious allegations, both the financial irregularities and the personal conduct issues. The board has a fiduciary duty to investigate thoroughly. I agree completely, Jae-hyun said, which seemed to surprise Lee. Which is why I'm asking for a full, independent audit. Not an internal review managed by people who might have conflicts of interest, but an external investigation. If I'm guilty of what my uncle is accusing me of, I should face consequences. But if I'm innocent, the real criminals should be exposed. Your uncle is accusing you? Lee's eyebrow rose fractionally. My uncle is the one who prepared the evidence being presented today, Jae-hyun said carefully. He's been the primary advisor on financial oversight for the past 8 years. Every document, every transaction log, every piece of evidence passes through his office before reaching the board. I'm not saying he's fabricated anything. I'm saying the person building the case against me is the same person who would benefit most from my removal. Lee was silent, processing. In Korean corporate culture, directly accusing a senior family member was nearly unthinkable. The hierarchy demanded deference, not confrontation. But the logic was sound enough to plant doubt. The consultant, Lee said finally. Ms. Carter, your uncle suggests there's an inappropriate relationship. Ms. Carter is investigating my company, Jae-hyun replied bluntly. She's been undercover for 3 months, building a case against me. The inappropriate relationship my uncle is describing is actually a series of meetings where she's been showing me evidence that I'm being framed, evidence that points to a shadow subsidiary called Baekho Investments, created 8 years ago and used to siphon billions from operational accounts. Lee's expression shifted. Not belief, but interest. Baekho, that was your grandfather's, his resistance name during the independence movement. Yes. Jae-hyun leaned forward slightly. Someone used my grandfather's legacy to create a front company. Someone who knew exactly how powerful that symbolism would be. How it would seem legitimate to anyone who looked at the incorporation papers. My uncle was my grandfather's closest advisor for 30 years. He knows every story, every name, every piece of family history that could be weaponized. These are serious accusations, Mr. CEO. They are. Which is why I'm not making them publicly. I'm bringing them to you, privately, as someone my family has trusted for 2 generations. Jae-hyun pulled out his phone, opened the audio file. I received this recording this morning. I don't know who sent it, but I think you should hear it before you vote. He pressed play. Uncle Myung-ho's voice filled the small room. Move up the timeline. He's asking questions, getting suspicious. We need him gone before the European deal closes. Lee's face went very still. CFO Kim's voice. The evidence is ready. I've seeded the transactions across 18 months. When the recording cut to static, Lee sat back in his chair, expression unreadable. 30 seconds of silence stretched between them. The kind of silence that holds entire futures in balance. Who else has heard this? Lee asked finally. Mrs. Hong, Ms. Carter, and now you. Jae-hyun met his eyes. I'm not asking you to vote for me, Director Lee. I'm asking you to demand the same full investigation I'm requesting. If I'm guilty, the independent audit will prove it. If I'm innocent, it will expose who's really behind this. Lee stood, adjusted his jacket with the precise movements of a man buying time to think. The board meeting starts in 23 minutes. Your uncle has 4 confirmed votes. I was told I'd be the tiebreaker. And now? Now I need to decide whether I'm voting on evidence or on theater. He moved toward the door, paused. My daughter speaks highly of you, Mr. SEO. She says you're the only Chaebol heir she's ever met who treats people like people, not like assets. I've always thought that was a weakness. Perhaps I was wrong. He left without waiting for a response. Jae-hyun exhaled, realized his hands were shaking. One conversation, 5 minutes. A recording that might be authentic or might be another layer of manipulation. He just gambled everything on the hope that doubt was stronger than loyalty. The door opened again. Zara, moving fast, laptop under her arm. Lee just passed me in the hall. Did it work? I don't know. He listened. That's all I can say. Then we moved to Plan B. She opened her laptop, pulled up a data visualization that looked like a spider's web of transactions. Park Jin-woo finished the preliminary analysis. 23 confirmed transactions where money leaves operational accounts, flows through Bekho Investments, and disappears into offshore subsidiaries in the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg. Total value, $4.7 billion. Can we prove my uncle authorized them? Not directly. He's too careful for that. But we can prove the transactions happened, that they're not in any official company reports, and that they all occurred during periods when he had sole signing authority. Circumstantial, but damning when combined with the audio recording and Mrs. Hong's historical documents. Jae-hyun checked his watch. 11:47. 13 minutes until his professional life was voted on by 7 people, 4 of whom his uncle controlled. If we present this in the meeting, your uncle will attack the methodology, question the sources, claim we're fabricating evidence to cover your guilt. Zara finished. That's why we don't present it to the board first. We present it to Lee Hwa-young. Jae-hyun stared at her. My ex-fiancée. The woman whose family arranged our engagement for a business merger. The woman who knows more than she's admitted, Zara interrupted. In the audio recording, your uncle mentioned her father's concerns about family loyalty and public perception. That means Hwa-young has been privy to conversations about you, about the frame-up, about the strategy. She may not have the full picture, but she knows enough to be uncomfortable. So we're betting she'll develop a conscience in the next 10 minutes. We're betting she's tired of being a chess piece, Zara said. Mrs. Hong told me Hwa-young visits the executive floor every Saturday to review foundation paperwork. Your mother's educational foundation, the one that funds scholarships for low-income students. She takes that work seriously. It's the one part of the family business she actually cares about. And that matters because people who care about something real are harder to manipulate with something fake. Zara pulled up a photo on her tablet. Lee Hwa-young at a foundation event, surrounded by scholarship recipients. Her smile genuine for once instead of the practiced corporate mask. If we show her what your uncle is really doing, not just framing you, but preparing to gut the entire company including the foundation she's dedicated years to, she might choose truth over family politics. That's a lot of assumptions stacked on hope. It's all we have, Zara said simply. Mrs. Hong is bringing her to conference room C in 4 minutes. You have that long to decide if you trust my read on human nature. Jae-hyun looked at the data on Zara's screen, the web of stolen billions. The architecture of betrayal his uncle had built transaction by transaction. Looked at the photo of Hwa-young, a woman he'd been engaged to for social convenience, someone he'd never actually known beyond the performance they both maintained. My mother used to say the hardest conversations are the ones where you have to trust someone you've never trusted before, he said quietly. I never understood what she meant. And now I understand she was preparing me for days like this. He closed Zara's laptop. Let's go talk to Hwa-young, but if this backfires, if she tells her father, if it accelerates the vote, then we'll have tried everything and lost honorably, Zara said, which is better than winning through silence. They walked to conference room C together. 2 people who'd become accidental allies in a war neither had chosen, but both refused to surrender. The clock read 11:51. 9 minutes until the board meeting. 9 minutes to convince a woman raised on corporate strategy and arranged marriages that truth was worth more than stability. The door opened. Lee Hwa-young stood inside. Perfect posture. Designer navy dress. Pearl necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. Every inch the Chaebol daughter trained from birth to represent family interests. But her eyes, when they met Jae-hyun's, held something he'd never seen there before. Fear barely contained by etiquette. Mrs. Hong said you needed to speak with me urgently, Hwa-young said, her voice steady despite the tension. The board meeting starts in 8 minutes. This must be quite important. It is, Jae-hyun said. And I'm sorry to involve you, but I think you already know more than you've admitted. About my uncle. About what's really happening today. Hwa-young's hand moved to her pearl necklace, fingers closing around it like a lifeline. The gesture was small, unconscious, but it told Zara everything she needed to know. This woman had been carrying a secret, and it was heavy. I don't know what you're implying, Hwa-young said carefully. Yes, you do, Zara replied, stepping forward. You've heard conversations between your father and Seo Myung-ho. Discussions about timing, evidence, the best way to handle the situation. You've been watching this conspiracy unfold for weeks, maybe months, and you've been pretending you don't see it because that's what you were taught to do. Protect the family, maintain appearances, never question the men making decisions. Hwa Young's composure cracked fractionally. Who are you to judge what I'm nobody, Zara said. I'm just someone who watched my father destroyed by men like Seo Myung-ho, while everyone around him stayed silent, because speaking up was inconvenient. I know what that silence costs. I know what it feels like to realize, years too late, that you could have stopped something terrible if you'd just been brave enough to break the rules. The room fell silent, except for the ventilation system's quiet hum. Hwa Young looked at Jae-hyun. If I tell you what I know, my family will disown me. My father is counting on that vote to secure a business partnership with your uncle. If I undermine that, then you'll lose everything you've been told matters, Jae-hyun said gently. Your position, your family's approval, the life you've been trained to live. I understand that cost, Hwa Young. I'm about to lose all of it too. The only question is whether we lose it while lying or while telling the truth. She closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them, something had shifted. A decision made, a bridge burned, the moment a person stops being what they were raised to be and starts becoming who they choose to be. 3 weeks ago, Hwa Young said quietly, I overheard my father and your uncle discussing the timeline. They were in my father's study, thought I was at a charity function. Your uncle said the European deal had to close before you could be removed, because international partners would demand renegotiation if the CEO changed mid-contract. He said once the deal was finalized, you'd become expendable. Zara pulled out her tablet. Did they mention Baiko Investments? No, but they discussed the accounts and how to reposition assets before the board investigation. My father asked if the evidence would hold up to external scrutiny. Your uncle laughed and said the evidence was perfect because it was built over 8 years. He said even you wouldn't be able to prove your innocence because the paper trail was too comprehensive. And you didn't tell anyone? Jae-hyun asked without judgment. I told myself it wasn't my business. That you'd hired lawyers. That the truth would emerge. Hwa Young's voice fractured slightly. But then your uncle mentioned the foundation. My foundation. The one your mother built. He said once you were removed, the board would restructure it, redirect the endowment to more strategic initiatives. He said scholarship programs were sentimental wastes of capital. Her hand tightened on the pearls. That's when I realized this wasn't about removing one corrupt CEO. This was about dismantling everything your mother fought for and replacing it with pure profit extraction. And I realized that if I stayed silent, I'd be complicit in destroying the one thing I've ever actually cared about. Zara showed her the data visualization, the web of stolen billions, the ghost transactions flowing through Baiko Investments. This is what your father's partnership is buying into. Not a legitimate business alliance, but a criminal enterprise that's been operating for 8 years. Hwa Young studied the screen, her expression hardening. What do you need from me? Your testimony, Jae-hyun said. What you heard, when you heard it. The exact words your father and my uncle used. You can deliver it in the board meeting or privately to your father. But we need someone besides us saying this conspiracy is real. If I testify, my father will never forgive me. Probably not, Zara agreed. But the students whose scholarships you'll be saving will remember you. The employees whose pensions won't be raided will remember you. And 20 years from now, when you look back at this moment, you'll know you chose the harder right over the easier wrong. The clock on the wall read, 11:58. Hwa Young touched her pearl necklace one last time, the symbol of tradition, of family expectations, of a life scripted by others. Then she unclasped it, set it on the conference table with the careful finality of someone putting down a weight they'd carried too long. I'll tell my father first, she said. Give him a chance to change his vote before the meeting starts. If he refuses, I'll testify publicly. She looked at Jae-hyun. We were never in love, were we? No, Jae-hyun said honestly. But I think we might have been friends. If we'd ever had the chance to be real with each other. Then let's start now, Hua Young said, by telling the truth together. She walked out of the conference room with her head high, a woman who'd just chosen to burn down her own life to save something that mattered more. Zara and Jae-hyun followed at a distance, watching her intercept her father in the hallway outside the boardroom. The conversation was brief, intense, conducted in the kind of urgent Korean that needed no translation. A daughter confronting a father, a subordinate defying authority, a person refusing to be a chess piece. Director Lee's face went through several expressions: shock, anger, calculation, and finally something that might have been respect. At 12:01, he entered the boardroom. At 12:02, the board meeting began, and at 12:03, everything changed. The boardroom was designed for intimidation. Long mahogany table, high-backed leather chairs, portraits of company founders staring down with the weight of legacy and expectation. CEO Myung-ho sat at the head of the table, his usual position when the CEO was under review, gold cufflinks catching the light as he arranged documents with the practiced calm of a man who'd orchestrated this moment for years. CFO Kim Dong-wook sat 3 seats down, tablet ready, the presentation cued and perfected, 63 slides that would dismantle Jae-hyun's career with surgical precision. The other board members filed in, conservative suits, grave expressions, the performance of duty masking various degrees of complicity and ignorance. Director Lee entered last, his face unreadable, and took his seat directly across from Myung-ho. Jae-hyun sat at the opposite end of the table from his uncle, the symbolic distance of accuser and accused. Zara stood against the back wall, officially present as consulting support, unofficially there, as the witness who'd started this war with a handwritten note. "Gentlemen," Myung-ho began, his voice measured and solemn, "we convene today under difficult circumstances. It gives me no pleasure to present evidence of financial misconduct by our CEO, my nephew, a young man I helped raise after his father's passing. But our duty to shareholders and employees demands we address these irregularities with complete transparency." He nodded to Kim. "Director Kim will present the financial review." Kim stood, activated the presentation. The first slide appeared. CEO Financial Conduct Review. Confidential Analysis. "Over the past 18 months, Kim began, our internal audit identified a pattern of unauthorized transactions originating from executive discretionary accounts. These transactions, totaling W3, $2 billion, were routed through various operational expenses, but ultimately flowed to external entities with no clear business justification." Slide 12. Jae-hyun's digital signature on transfer authorizations. Slide 21. Email exchanges discussing strategic reallocation of funds. Slide 34. Meeting logs showing Jae-hyun present when key decisions were made. It was masterful fiction. Every piece of evidence technically real, but stripped of context, reframed, weaponized. Jae-hyun watched his own professional life turned into a prosecutor's exhibit, and despite knowing it was fabricated, felt the weight of institutional condemnation settling over him. Furthermore, Kim continued, reaching slide 48, concerns have emerged regarding CEO personal conduct that may compromise his judgment. Specifically, an inappropriate relationship with a foreign consultant engaged in our audit process. The photograph appeared, Jae-hyun and Zara leaving the Shilla Hotel, proximity suggesting intimacy. "This relationship," Kim said carefully, "raises questions about whether the CEO's decisions have been influenced by personal rather than professional considerations. Combined with the financial irregularities, the pattern suggests a leader whose judgment is fundamentally compromised." Myung-ho allowed a moment of heavy silence. "I know this is difficult to hear. But we must ask ourselves, can we afford to keep a CEO whose conduct, both financial and personal, undermines stakeholder confidence? The European deal closes in 6 weeks. International partners will demand stability, transparency, proven leadership. If we wait and this becomes public, then perhaps," Director Lee interrupted quietly, "we should examine whether the evidence itself is as transparent as we assume." The room shifted. Myung-ho's expression flickered, just a microsecond of surprise before the mask returned. "Director Lee," Myung-ho prompted. Lee stood, pulling out his phone. Before we vote on termination, I believe the board should hear additional context. Mr. SEO, you invoked procedural rights to present a defense. I suggest we hear it now. Myung-ho's jaw tightened fractionally. Director Lee, we've reviewed evidence prepared by interested parties, Lee said, his voice still calm, but carrying new steel. Director Kim reports to Mr. SEO Myung-ho. The audit was supervised by Mr. SEO Myung-ho. The presentation was compiled under Mr. SEO Myung-ho's guidance. I'm not suggesting impropriety, merely noting that independent review has not yet occurred. Another board member, Park Jin-soo, cleared his throat. Director Lee raises a valid concern. Due process requires the accused have opportunity to respond. Myung-ho's smile was practiced patience. Of course. Jae-hyun, please. Share whatever defense you feel is relevant. Jae-hyun stood, feeling the weight of 7 sets of eyes, decades of family expectation, and the fragile hope that truth still mattered in rooms like this. Thank you, Director Lee, Director Park. He pulled out his own tablet, the data Zara and Park Jin-woo had compiled through hours of illegal database access. The financial evidence you've just seen is technically accurate, but fundamentally misleading. Those transactions did occur, but they didn't flow from my authorization. They flowed through accounts I controlled in name only. He activated the visualization, the spider web of transactions, red lines showing money leaving operational accounts, flowing through ghost subsidiaries, disappearing offshore. This is Baekho Investments, Jae-hyun said, highlighting the central node. A shell company registered 8 years ago, 3 months after my mother's death. It was incorporated using my grandfather's resistance name, a detail only family members would know. The company has no employees, no physical location, no business operations. It exists solely to move money. He pulled up the incorporation documents. The registration was filed under Temporary Emergency Authority, granted to senior management during the leadership transition. Specifically, authority granted to my uncle, Seo Myung-ho. The room went very quiet. Kim stood quickly. This is deflection. It's documentation. Jae-hyun cut him off. Over the past 8 years, W4.7 billion has moved through Baekho Investments into offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg. These transactions were recorded using my executive credentials that IT logs show were accessed from IP addresses I've never used, during times when I was verifiably in other countries. He displayed the authentication logs Park had pulled. On March 14th, my credentials authorized a W200 million transfer at 3:47 a.m. Korea time. I was in Berlin that day, verified by immigration records and hotel logs. On July 22nd, another transfer at 2:15 a.m. I was in Singapore, documented by conference attendance. The pattern repeats 23 times. Zara stepped forward from her position against the wall. I'm Special Investigator Zara Carter, International Corporate Crimes Task Force. I've been investigating this company for 3 months. The evidence Mr. SEO is presenting aligns with forensic analysis my team conducted independently. The transaction patterns, the IP spoofing, the offshore routing. These are hallmarks of sophisticated embezzlement, not executive misconduct. Myung-ho's face remained composed, but his hands gripped the table edge. This is absurd. You expect us to believe my nephew? I expect you to listen to this, Jae-hyun said, and played the audio file. His uncle's voice filled the boardroom. We need him gone before the European deal closes. Kim's voice. The evidence is ready. I've seeded the transactions across 18 months. The recording played through to the static cutoff. 35 seconds that destroyed 8 years of careful conspiracy. When it ended, the silence was absolute. Director Park spoke first. Where did you obtain this recording? It was delivered anonymously, Jae-hyun said. I don't know who recorded it or where it was made. But voice analysis confirms it's genuine. Those are Director Kim's and my uncle's voices, discussing evidence fabrication. This could be edited, Kim started. Then let's have it independently analyzed, Lee said. Along with the financial records Mr. SEO just presented, and the IP logs, and the offshore account documentation, He looked at Myung-ho. "Unless you object to independent review, Director Seo." Myung-ho's smile was thin ice over deep water. "Of course not. Transparency benefits everyone." But his eyes promised retribution. The boardroom door opened. Mrs. Hong entered with the precision of someone who'd timed this moment perfectly, carrying a yellowed craft envelope. "My apologies for the interruption," she said with a bow. "But I was asked to deliver historical documentation relevant to Baekho Investment's founding." She placed the envelope in front of Director Lee. "Company Archives, 1987 through 2017. Incorporation papers, initial capital authorizations, board minutes from the transition period following Madame Seo's passing." Lee opened the envelope, began reading. His expression darkened with each page. Myung-ho stood. "This meeting has devolved into unsubstantiated accusations. I move we proceed with the original vote." "I move we suspend the vote pending full independent audit," Lee countered. "All in favor?" 4 hands rose. Lee, Park, and 2 others who'd been sitting quietly but watching the evidence mount. "The motion carries," Lee said. "This meeting is adjourned pending external review. Director Kim, Director SEO, you are both required to make yourselves available for investigator interviews. Failure to cooperate will be noted." Myung-ho's composure finally cracked, just a flash of rage before the mask returned. "You're making a serious mistake, Director Lee." "Perhaps," Lee replied, "but it's a mistake I can live with, unlike the alternative." The board filed out, the meeting dissolved, and Jae-hyun realized he'd just survived the second assassination attempt in 24 hours. But his uncle's expression as he left the boardroom made one thing clear. The war was far from over, and the next attack would be even more ruthless. The media storm hit 90 minutes after the board meeting adjourned. Chaebol CEO accused of $1 billion embezzlement, board orders, emergency audit. SEO Jae-hyun faces corruption probe, family empire in crisis. Exclusive, inside the SEO group, power struggle, uncle versus nephew. Every major outlet ran the story simultaneously, which meant someone had pre-written the releases and was simply waiting for the right moment to detonate them. The narrative was carefully crafted. A young CEO accused of corruption. Family members forced to investigate. Institutional integrity at stake. Jae-hyun's name was in every headline. His uncle's name appeared only as senior advisor assisting the board review. Zara watched the coverage on her laptop from a borrowed office 3 floors below the executive suite. He's controlling the story. Making you look like the scandal and himself like the responsible elder, stepping in to clean up your mess. Jae-hyun stood at the window, watching Seoul spread out below like a judgment. His phone had been ringing constantly. Reporters, investors, business partners suddenly concerned about the European deal. His assistant had fielded 43 calls in the first hour. "Can we counter it?" he asked. "Not without revealing the investigation details, which would compromise the independent audit," Zara replied. "And if we go public with the audio recording before it's been verified, your uncle's lawyers will claim it's fabricated or illegally obtained. We'd lose credibility and potentially face legal action." Her own phone buzzed. Her handler again, the 10th call she'd ignored. A text followed. "Carter, extraction team en route to Seoul. You have 4 hours to report to embassy or face immediate termination and potential criminal charges for obstruction." She showed Jae-hyun the message. "My organization wants me gone before I can testify. They've decided you're guilty and my involvement is embarrassing them politically. So they're cutting you loose. Worse, they're preparing to discredit me. By tonight, there'll be anonymous leaks suggesting I'm a rogue agent, that my investigation lacked proper authorization, that I falsified evidence." She closed her laptop with controlled force. "They'll burn me to protect their own reputation. Can they do that?" "They're doing it right now," Zara said flatly. "Welcome to institutional self-preservation. When the mission goes sideways, sacrifice the operator and pretend it never happened." Jae-hyun's phone rang. "Mrs. Hong." He answered. "Yes?" "Sir, Director Kim just submitted his resignation, effective immediately. Security escorted him from the building 10 minutes ago. He took nothing with him. They seized his laptop, phone, and access cards." Did he say anything? Only that he was advised by legal counsel not to speak without representation present. Mrs. Hong paused. Sir, people are scared. The staff doesn't know what's happening. Rumors are spreading, and your uncle just sent a company-wide email expressing deep regret about the situation and asking everyone to remain professional during this difficult transition. Transition. As if Jae-hyun's removal was already decided. Just a matter of paperwork. Mrs. Hong, I need you to do something that might end your career. Jae-hyun said quietly. I'm 68 years old, Mr. Seo. My career is already ending. What do you need? Access to my uncle's office. His personal files, computer, anything that might show his communications with CFO Kim or the offshore accounts. If he's been running this operation for 8 years, there have to be records, emails, documents, something he kept as insurance or leverage. He'll have them secured, encrypted, hidden. Then we find someone who knows how to crack security, break encryption, and dig up hidden files, Zara interrupted. She pulled out her phone, dialed Park Jin-woo. Mr. Park, I need a favor that will absolutely get you fired if you're caught. 20 minutes later, they had a plan that was equal parts desperation and determination. Park Jin-woo would access Myung-ho's office computer remotely using maintenance credentials, bypassing physical security by exploiting a network vulnerability he'd discovered months ago but never reported. Mrs. Hong would provide cover by scheduling an emergency system backup that would explain unusual network activity. Zara would run the forensic analysis on any files they extracted, and Jae-hyun would keep his uncle distracted with a family dinner, a tense, awful performance of normalcy while they robbed him digitally. This is illegal, Park said nervously when they met in the server room at 6 p.m. If we're caught, then we're caught committing crimes to expose crimes, Zara replied. I've already crossed that line. You can still walk away. Park looked at Jae-hyun. Your mother's foundation paid for my daughter's university education. 4 years, full scholarship, room and board. She's graduating next month. First person in our family to get a degree. If your uncle guts the company like you say he plans to, that foundation disappears. So no, I'm not walking away. He started typing, fingers flying across keyboards, screens filling with code and access protocols. I'm in. His computer is active. He's working late, probably coordinating the media response. I'll wait until he steps away, then copy his entire drive. How long will that take? Jae-hyun asked. 20 minutes if his drive is clean. Longer if it's encrypted or if there are hidden partitions. Park's screen flickered. He just locked his computer. Bathroom break, maybe. I'm initiating the copy now. Mrs. Hong, start your system backup to cover the network spike. Mrs. Hong clicked through administrative menus, triggering maintenance protocols. Across the building, IT systems began their evening backup cycle, network activity spiking in patterns that would mask Park's digital intrusion. Zara watched the progress bar. 12%, 18%, 23%. Jae-hyun's phone buzzed. Text from his uncle. Nephew, we should have dinner tonight. Family matters to discuss. My office, 8 p.m. The timing was either coincidence or threat. Possibly both. He wants to meet, Jae-hyun said, showing the text. Then meet him, Zara replied. Keep him there as long as you can. Make him think he's still in control. Let him gloat, threaten, whatever he needs to feel powerful. Every minute he's talking is a minute we have to find the evidence that destroys him. Progress bar, 47%, 51%. If he knows what we're doing, Jae-hyun started. He doesn't, Park said, eyes fixed on his screen. Network logs look normal. His computer shows no alerts. His security software hasn't triggered. We're ghosts. Progress bar, 68%, 74%. At 7:53 p.m., the copy completed. Park ejected safely, erased his access logs, and exhaled like someone who'd been holding their breath underwater. I have everything. His entire drive, emails going back 6 years, encrypted folders, chat logs, financial spreadsheets. It'll take hours to sort through, but if the evidence exists, it's here. Then start sorting, Zara said. Mr. Aseo, go have dinner with your uncle. Mrs. Hong, you should go home. If this goes wrong, you need plausible deniability. Mrs. Hong stood with the dignity of a woman who'd stopped caring about plausible deniability 3 betrayals ago. I'll be in my office if you need me. And Mr. Aseo, your mother would be proud you're fighting back. She spent her last year trying to do the same thing. She left before he could respond. That small revelation hanging in the air like smoke from a match burned out too soon. At 8:02 p.m., Jae-hyun entered his uncle's office. Myung-ho sat behind his desk, a bottle of aged whiskey and 2 glasses arranged like props in a play. The office was designed to project power. Dark wood, leather, Seoul skyline glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Jae-hyun, Myung-ho said warmly, pouring 2 generous measures. Thank you for coming. I know today was difficult. Jae-hyun sat, accepted the glass, but didn't drink. You mean the part where you tried to have me fired for crimes you committed? His uncle's smile never wavered. I mean the part where you forced the board into an expensive, time-consuming investigation that will ultimately prove what I've been saying all along. But you're young, stubborn, your mother's son. I expected resistance. You framed me. I protected the company, Myung-ho corrected. Your grandfather built this empire with ruthlessness disguised as principle. Your father tried to soften it and died of stress. Your mother tried to democratize it and collapsed under the weight. You inherited their weakness. Empathy, hesitation, the naive belief that corporations can be moral. And you inherited what? The belief that theft is strategy? Myung-ho finally dropped the avuncular mask. I inherited the realism to understand that the CO name is a tool, not a sacred trust. For 30 years, I've done what was necessary to keep this company profitable, while your father and mother wasted resources on legacy and values. The foundation, the scholarships, the employee protections, beautiful sentiments that cost billions. So you stole billions. I reallocated capital to people who understood its value, Myung-ho said calmly. Partners who didn't waste it on workers who'd be automated out of jobs within a decade anyway. You call it theft. I call it efficiency. Jae-hyun felt cold clarity settle over him. This wasn't a man who'd fallen into corruption. This was a man who'd weaponized it as business philosophy. The board will find the evidence, Jae-hyun said. The offshore accounts, the ghost transactions, Baekho investments. The board will find what I allow them to find, Myung-ho interrupted. Director Kim has already agreed to take full responsibility in exchange for a comfortable retirement abroad. The paper trail leads to him, not to me. And when the investigation concludes, you'll be gone, Kim will be gone, and I'll remain, the loyal senior advisor who helped uncover corruption and restore integrity. And the audio recording will be dismissed as fabricated or illegally obtained. Your investigator friend has no legal authority here, no valid chain of custody, no credible standing. By tomorrow, she'll be back in the U.S. facing criminal charges for obstruction, and you'll be unemployed, unemployable, and infamous. He raised his glass. So let's drink to family, Jae-hyun, because when this is over, you'll have nothing left but the name, and even that will be tainted. Jae-hyun stood without touching his drink. You're wrong about one thing, uncle. You think you've planned for everything, but you forgot the one variable you've never understood. People who fight for something beyond profit are harder to break than people who only fight for themselves. Beautiful sentiment, Myung-ho said. Let me know how it feels when you're broke. Jae-hyun left the office, walked back to the server room where Zara and Park were drowning in extracted data. Well? Zara asked, looking up from her laptop. He confessed everything, Jae-hyun said. Not in a way we can use legally, but he told me exactly how he did it, why he did it, and how he plans to get away with it. Then let's make sure he's wrong about that last part, Zara replied. She turned her screen around. Park found encrypted folders labeled insurance. We just cracked them. You need to see this. On the screen, emails between Myung-ho and offshore bankers, transaction authorizations bearing his personal encryption key, chat logs discussing the frame-up in explicit detail. And one more file. A video recording, dated 18 months ago. Zara played it. The video showed Myung-ho and CFO Kim in a private office, discussing the creation of fake evidence. Myung-ho. We seed it gradually. Small transactions, building to a pattern. Nothing dramatic enough to trigger immediate investigation, but comprehensive enough that when we reveal it, guilt seems obvious. Kim. And if Jae-hyun fights back? Myung-ho. Then we've built 8 years of foundation. His word against a mountain of documentation. He loses. The video ended. Zara looked at Jae-hyun. He kept his own insurance, evidence to protect himself if Kim ever turned on him. He documented his entire conspiracy because he never imagined anyone would get access to his personal files. Can we use this? In court? Absolutely. It's his voice, his office, his encrypted files requiring his personal password to access. This isn't fabricated or illegally obtained. This is evidence of criminal conspiracy from the conspirator's own archive. Jae-hyun felt something he hadn't felt in days. Hope, sharp, and dangerous. Then let's end this, he said. But even as they began preparing the evidence package, Zara's phone buzzed with a final message from her handler. Embassy extraction at 06 Gao. Fail to appear, and we issue an international warrant. This is over, Carter. She had 8 hours left before her own war ended, whether they won this one or not. At 11:47 p.m., Park Jin-woo compiled the final evidence package, 847 pages of documentation, 16 video files, 2,341 transaction records, all cross-referenced and time-stamped. This is everything, he said, exhaustion making his hands shake. Email chains between your uncle and offshore bankers dating back 6 years. Authorization codes that match his personal encryption key. Transaction logs showing money moving from Baek-ho Investments to accounts in his name. And the videos, him discussing the frame-up, him instructing Kim to alter reports, him celebrating after board meetings where they blocked your mother's reforms. Zara scrolled through the files, her investigator's mind cataloging evidence weight, legal admissibility, prosecution viability. This doesn't just prove the current conspiracy. It proves pattern and intent spanning almost a decade. Any prosecutor would take this case. If they get the chance, Jae-hyun said. He was looking at his phone, reading news alerts that kept multiplying. My uncle's leaked more stories. Sources close to the investigation say the CEO's defense relies on unverified recordings and conspiracy theories. The narrative is shifting from investigation pending to guilty CEO desperately deflecting. Then we change the narrative, Zara said. We take this evidence directly to the prosecutor's office, bypass the board entirely, force a criminal investigation that your uncle can't control. And your embassy extraction? Zara checked her watch, 12:03 a.m. I have 5 hours and 57 minutes before they come for me. Plenty of time to destroy a criminal empire and ruin my career properly. Park laughed despite the tension, a sharp, slightly hysterical sound. We're all insane. You know that, right? We're committing multiple crimes to expose crimes committed by people powerful enough to make us disappear. Welcome to fighting institutional corruption, Zara replied. It's always illegal, always dangerous, and the only people who do it are the ones too angry or too stubborn to care about consequences anymore. Mrs. Hong appeared in the doorway, still dressed in her work clothes despite the late hour. The prosecutor you want is Kang Min-jae. He handled the last major chaebol corruption case 3 years ago. Convicted 2 executives for embezzlement despite political pressure to drop the investigation. He has a reputation for being incorruptible, which in Seoul makes him either very brave or very naive. How do we reach him? Jae-hyun asked. I have his personal number. His daughter was one of your mother's scholarship recipients. He's told me several times that he owes your family a debt. Perhaps it's time to call that in. She made the call, spoke quietly in Korean, the kind of formal speech that conveyed both respect and urgency. After 3 minutes, she handed the phone to Jae-hyun. Prosecutor Kang, my apologies for calling so late. A man's voice, alert despite the hour. Mrs. Hong explained the situation. You have evidence of criminal conspiracy within the SEO group? Evidence that my uncle has been embezzling billions through shell companies for 8 years, and that he's currently framing me to cover his crimes. I have documentation, videos, transaction records, everything you'd need for prosecution. A pause. These are serious allegations against a senior member of one of Korea's most prominent families. If I open an investigation based on incomplete or falsified evidence, the political fallout could end my career. If you don't open an investigation, Jae-hyun replied, a criminal walks free, a company gets gutted, and hundreds of employees lose their pensions while the man who stole them retires wealthy. I understand the risk. I'm asking you to take it anyway. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, send me everything you have. If the evidence is as comprehensive as you claim, I'll request emergency judicial authorization for arrests and asset freezes. But Mr. SEO, if this is a corporate power struggle disguised as a criminal case, if you're using my office to settle family disputes, I will prosecute you for obstruction. Am I clear? Completely clear, Jae-hyun said. And Prosecutor Kang? Thank you. Thank your mother, Mr. SEO. She believed the system could work if the right people fought for it. Let's prove she wasn't naive. The call ended. Park immediately began uploading files to a secure server, creating access credentials for the prosecutor's office. This is every file we extracted, plus my forensic analysis showing they're authentic and unaltered, cross-referenced with public corporate records to establish timeline and context. It'll take them hours to review everything, but once they do, my uncle goes to prison, Jae-hyun finished. If the prosecutor moves fast enough, Zara cautioned. Your uncle has connections in the prosecutor's office, the police, the courts. The moment he hears about the investigation, he'll activate every relationship he's cultivated over 30 years. We're racing against his ability to make evidence disappear and witnesses recant. Then we make it public, Jae-hyun said. Upload everything to media outlets simultaneously. Make the evidence too widespread to suppress. That's my nuclear option, Zara agreed. But once we do it, there's no controlling the narrative. Your company's stock will crash, your business partners will panic, and you'll be fighting legal battles for years. Even after your uncle is convicted, the damage to the SEO name will be permanent. Jae-hyun thought about his grandfather, who'd built the company from nothing after the war. Thought about his father, who'd died trying to preserve it. Thought about his mother, who'd fought to make it something worth preserving. And thought about himself, the CEO who'd inherited an empire and discovered it was built partially on theft. My mother spent her last year trying to expose this, he said quietly. My uncle isolated her, undermined her, stressed her until her heart gave out. And I watched it happen without understanding what was really going on. He looked at the evidence on Park's screen, 8 years of crime meticulously documented. If making this public destroys the SEO name, maybe the SEO name deserves to be destroyed. Maybe we start over with something honest. Mrs. Hong touched his shoulder briefly. A rare gesture from a woman who'd spent 40 years maintaining professional distance. Your mother would say that's not destruction, Mr. CEO. That's finally building the company she wanted. The one where the name means integrity instead of just power. At 2:34 a.m., Prosecutor Kang called back. I've reviewed enough of the evidence to request emergency judicial authorization. A judge will hear the request at 7 a.m. If granted, I'll have authority to freeze accounts, seize documents, and make arrests by 9 a.m. But Mr. SEO, you need to understand. Your uncle will hear about this the moment the court filing hits the system. That gives him approximately 4 hours to destroy evidence, flee the country, or activate whatever contingency plans he's prepared. What do you need from me? Jae-hyun asked. Keep him in Seoul. If he boards a plane before I get authorization, we lose him. And Mr. CEO? Be careful. Desperate men with billions to lose are capable of actions that would shock you. The call ended. Jae-hyun looked at his team. Zara running on 36 hours without sleep. Park's hands still shaking from the illegal access operation. Mrs. Hong standing vigil like she'd done through 3 generations of CEO family crises. We have 4 hours to make sure my uncle doesn't run, Jae-hyun said. Ideas? Family breakfast, Mrs. Hong suggested. Traditional Korean meal. Your grandfather's favorite restaurant. Early morning reservation. Tell him you want to discuss terms for your resignation. Make him think he's won, that you're surrendering. Keep him at breakfast until the prosecutor arrives with arrest warrants. He'll be suspicious if I suddenly want to meet after everything that's happened. Jae-hyun objected. Not if I'm the one who arranges it, Mrs. Hong replied. I've been his trusted secretary for decades. If I tell him you're ready to negotiate a quiet exit, he'll believe me. He's always underestimated me, assumed I was just furniture in the background, too old and too compliant to be dangerous. This will expose your role in the investigation, Zara warned. I'm 68 years old with a full pension and a grandson in university, Mrs. Hong said calmly. What can they take from me that matters? And what can I give my grandson except the example that silence is complicity? And sometimes the only way to honor the people you loved is to fight for what they couldn't finish. She made the call at 2:47 a.m., speaking to Myung-ho with the perfect deference of a loyal subordinate. Sir, I apologize for the late call. Mr. Jae-hyun has asked me to arrange a private breakfast meeting with you. He's ready to discuss terms for stepping down quietly. He wants to avoid further damage to the family name. Would 7:30 a.m. work? The restaurant in Bukchon, your usual table. Through the phone, Myung-ho's voice carried satisfaction barely disguised as reluctance. Of course. Tell him I appreciate his maturity. This is best for everyone. When Mrs. Hong hung up, her hands were steady. He'll be there. Now we just need to make sure the prosecutor is faster than your uncle's instinct to run. At 3:15 a.m., Zara's phone rang, her contact at the forensic audio lab. The cut audio file you sent me. I restored the missing section. You need to hear this. She put it on speaker. The recording picked up where the previous version had cut off. Myung-ho. And if the investigation expands beyond Jae-hyun? Kim. Then we activate the contingency. The Swiss accounts are ready, documents are destroyed, and we're both out of the country within 12 hours. I have new identities prepared. Myung-ho. Good. Because if this unravels, I'm not going to prison to protect anyone. You, the board members, the offshore partners, everyone becomes expendable if it means I stay free. The recording ended. He's been planning his escape from the beginning, Zara said. The moment he feels threatened, he runs, which means breakfast is our only chance to keep him in Korea long enough for the prosecutor to move. Jae-hyun felt the weight of the next 4 hours settle over him. The razor-thin margin between justice and escape, between exposing his uncle and watching him disappear into a comfortable exile, funded by stolen billions. Then I'll keep him at breakfast, Jae-hyun said. Whatever it takes. At 6 a.m., as Zara's embassy extraction team arrived at her hotel, only to find she'd checked out hours ago, Prosecutor Kang stood before a judge presenting evidence of the largest chaebol embezzlement case in a decade. At 6:47 a.m., judicial authorization was granted. At 7:15 a.m., Jae-hyun sat down across from his uncle at a traditional Korean restaurant in Bukchon, the morning light filtering through hanji paper windows, making everything look deceptively peaceful. And at 7:18 a.m., as Myung-ho poured tea with the gracious satisfaction of a man who believed he'd won, prosecutor vehicles surrounded the building, and Seoul's most elaborate corporate conspiracy began its very public collapse. The restaurant was called Haejanguk House, a third-generation establishment known for serving traditional hangover soup to politicians and businessmen since 1962. Myung-ho had been eating breakfast here for 30 years, always the same corner table, always treated with the deference reserved for Seoul's corporate royalty. Jae-hyun sat across from his uncle, the low table between them set with banchan, small plates of kimchi, seasoned vegetables, the ritual of Korean breakfast that his grandfather had taught him meant family, continuity, trust. I appreciate you agreeing to meet, Myung-ho said, pouring barley tea into Jae-hyun's cup with practiced ceremony. I know the past few days have been difficult, but this is the wise choice. Step down gracefully, preserve what dignity remains, and perhaps in a few years after the scandal fades, you can rebuild elsewhere. And the company? Jae-hyun asked, forcing his voice to stay neutral. Will be restructured under new leadership. I'm recommending your cousin Min-jun for interim CEO. Young, capable, untainted by investigation. The board will approve the transition this afternoon. Myung-ho's smile was almost paternal. You'll receive a generous severance, of course. Your grandfather's legacy ensures that much. Through the restaurant's front windows, Jae-hyun could see Seoul waking up. Early commuters, delivery trucks, the machinery of a city that would soon be reading about this breakfast in every news outlet. Somewhere out there, Prosecutor Kang was coordinating arrest teams. Somewhere, Zara was running from her own organization while protecting the evidence that would destroy this man who poured tea like nothing was wrong. And the foundation? Jae-hyun asked. My mother's scholarship program? Myung-ho's expression flickered, brief irritation before the mask returned. We'll evaluate its cost-effectiveness. Sentiment is admirable, but shareholders expect returns. Perhaps we redirect those resources to more strategic initiatives. You mean eliminate it entirely? I mean optimize capital allocation, Myung-ho corrected smoothly. Your mother was a kind woman, Jae-hyun, but kindness is expensive. The company can't afford to fund every charitable impulse while competitors are outmaneuvering us in emerging markets. Jae-hyun touched his grandfather's Mont Blanc pen in his jacket pocket, that small anchor to purpose. And if I refuse to resign? Myung-ho's smile faded. Then the board votes this afternoon. You're terminated for cause, and instead of severance, you face civil litigation for financial damages. The media narrative becomes uglier, your name becomes more toxic, and you lose everything fighting a battle you cannot win. He leaned forward slightly. I'm offering you an exit with dignity. Take it. Or what? Jae-hyun asked quietly. You activate Plan B? Destroy the evidence? Flee to Switzerland? Let CFO Kim take the fall while you disappear into a comfortable retirement? The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Myung-ho's expression went very still, the kind of stillness that precedes violence or calculation. What exactly are you implying? I'm implying I know about Baekho Investments, about the offshore accounts in the Caymans and Luxembourg, about the 8 years of embezzlement you've disguised as operational expenses. I know about the video where you and Kim discuss framing me. I know about your contingency plan to flee the country if the investigation expands. Jae-hyun set his phone on the table, the audio file cued. And I know you've been planning this since my mother died, that you killed her just as surely as if you'd put a gun to her head. Myung-ho stood abruptly, chair scraping against wood floors. You have no proof. I have 847 pages of proof, Jae-hyun interrupted. Extracted from your personal computer. Authenticated by forensic IT analysis. Currently under review by prosecutor Kang Min-jae, who specializes in chaebol corruption cases and has a reputation for being inconveniently honest. Illegally obtained evidence is inadmissible. In court, maybe. But in the media? In shareholder meetings? In the international business community you've spent 30 years cultivating relationships within? Jae-hyun stood to face him. The evidence doesn't need to be legally admissible to destroy you, uncle. It just needs to be true. Myung-ho's hand moved to his phone, fingers tightening around it. Outside, 3 black SUVs pulled up to the restaurant entrance. Prosecutor vehicles, unmarked but unmistakable. You set me up, Myung-ho said, voice low and dangerous. This breakfast was a trap. No, Jae-hyun replied. This breakfast was a courtesy. A chance to sit across from you one last time and understand why you spent 30 years destroying everything my grandfather built. Why you killed my mother. Why you tried to kill me. I never... You killed them with pressure, isolation, strategic crises timed to break them, Jae-hyun said, his voice finally cracking with the rage he'd been controlling for days. You're just too much of a coward to use a weapon that leaves evidence. But my mother's medical records show stress-induced heart failure at 53. My father died of cardiac arrest at 52. Both of them spent their final years fighting battles on every front while you whispered supportive advice and orchestrated their destruction. The restaurant door opened. Prosecutor Kang entered with 4 officers, badges visible, expressions professionally neutral. SEO Myung-ho, Kang said formally, you are under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, money laundering, and criminal conspiracy. You have the right to legal representation. Myung-ho's face transformed. The practiced patrician mask shattered, revealing something desperate and cornered underneath. "This is a family matter. Corporate dispute. You have no jurisdiction." "I have judicial authorization, seized documents, and witness testimony," Kang replied calmly. "And I have video evidence of you discussing criminal conspiracy in your own words. We can do this quietly or publicly, Director Seo. Your choice." For 5 seconds, Myung-ho looked like he might run. Muscles tensed, eyes calculating exits, the animal response of a predator realizing it's been trapped. But the officers blocked both doors, and his decades of corporate discipline reasserted itself. "I want my lawyer," he said coldly. "Of course," Kang replied. "You can call from the prosecutor's office." They led him out in handcuffs, discreet but visible, the kind of visual that would dominate news coverage for weeks. Jae-hyun watched through the window as his uncle was placed in the vehicle, his expression already shifting from shock to calculation, mind probably racing through legal strategies and political connections. But even powerful men couldn't outrun 847 pages of their own documented crimes. Kang approached Jae-hyun after the vehicles departed. "CFO Kim was arrested at his home 20 minutes ago. We're executing search warrants on Baek Ho Investments' registered address and 3 offshore banking partners. This investigation will take months, possibly years. You understand that?" "I understand," Jae-hyun said. "And you understand that your company will face intense scrutiny, that your personal reputation will be questioned despite your cooperation, that this will be painful in ways you can't anticipate." "I understand that too." Kang studied him. This CEO who'd just destroyed his own uncle, blown up his family legacy, and chosen truth over the comfortable lie of corporate solidarity. "Your mother called me once, about 6 months before she died, asked about legal options for investigating board corruption. I told her the evidence requirements would be substantial, that accusations without proof would destroy her credibility." He looked uncomfortable with the memory. "I told her to be careful. And she was careful. So careful that she died without ever making the accusation public. She was building the case," Jae-hyun said quietly. "Collecting evidence, documenting irregularities. She probably knew she'd never see it through. But she started it anyway, hoping someone would finish it." "Then you did what she couldn't," Kang said. "That's worth something." He left to coordinate the expanding investigation. Jae-hyun remained in the empty restaurant, the breakfast untouched, the morning light streaming through paper windows making everything look gentler than it was. His phone buzzed. Text from Zara. "Saw the news. Your uncle is in custody. I'm at the airport, caught between prosecutors who want me arrested and prosecutors who want my testimony. It's complicated, but we did it. The conspiracy is exposed. Whatever happens next, we did the right thing." He typed back, "Where are you going?" Her response took 3 minutes. "Honestly, I don't know. Away from my organization, toward whatever comes next. I testified remotely to Kang's office, gave them everything I had. My part is done. Yours is just beginning. Build something better, Jae-hyun. Build the company your mother wanted." "I will," he typed. "And Zara? Thank you for the note, for everything after it. Thank you for trusting someone you had every reason not to trust. That's rarer than you think." The messages stopped. Jae-hyun didn't know if she'd boarded a plane, disappeared into witness protection, or simply vanished the way intelligence operatives did when their missions ended messily. He hoped she found whatever peace looked like for someone who'd burned their entire career to do the right thing. At 9:47 a.m., the news broke simultaneously across every major outlet. SEO Group senior advisor arrested, W4.7 billion embezzlement scheme exposed. Prosecutor, CEO Jae-hyun was framed by uncle in elaborate conspiracy. Breaking, Chaebol corruption case implicates offshore networks, board members. The narrative had shifted. Overnight, Jae-hyun went from suspected criminal to victim of family betrayal to the CEO who'd exposed corruption at cost of his own empire. His phone exploded with messages. Board members requesting emergency meetings, investors demanding clarification, media outlets begging for interviews, international partners expressing concerned support. The machinery of corporate crisis management roared to life, everyone scrambling to position themselves on the right side of the scandal. Mrs. Hong called at 10:15. "Sir, the office is chaos." "What are your instructions?" Jae-hyun looked at the empty restaurant, the untouched breakfast, the morning light that made everything look like possibility instead of wreckage. "Schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning," he said. "Full transparency. I'm presenting the complete investigation findings, the evidence timeline, everything we know about the embezzlement network. And Mrs. Hong? I'm proposing complete governance restructuring. Independent board majority, external audits, whistleblower protections, the reforms my mother tried to implement before my uncle blocked them. The board will resist. Then they can resign," Jae-hyun said. "Because we're building something different now. Something that might actually deserve the name my grandfather gave it." He hung up, paid for the uneaten breakfast, and walked out into Seoul's morning, a CEO who'd lost his uncle, exposed his family's crimes, and inherited an empire built partially on theft. But empires could be rebuilt. Legacies could be rewritten. And sometimes the only way to honor the people who came before was to burn down what they'd built and start over with the truth. Zara made it to Gate 47 at Incheon Airport before her past caught up with her. 2 agents in dark suits, embassy credentials displayed with the casual authority of people who never expected resistance. The man spoke first, voice low enough not to attract attention, but firm enough to communicate this wasn't negotiable. "Special Investigator Carter, you missed your extraction. We're here to escort you to embassy custody pending formal recall proceedings." "I'm aware I missed extraction," Zara replied calmly, not moving from her position near the departure lounge. "I was busy testifying in a criminal investigation. You know, doing the job I was actually trained for before it became about politics instead of justice." The woman stepped closer. "You disobeyed direct orders, compromised an investigation, and potentially violated international intelligence protocols. This isn't a debate, Carter. You're coming with us." "Am I under arrest?" "Not yet," the man said. "But you will be if you don't cooperate. Obstruction of justice, unauthorized intelligence activities, misuse of classified resources. We have 8 charges drafted and ready. Walk with us quietly, and maybe you avoid criminal prosecution." Zara looked at the departure board. Flights to Tokyo, Singapore, San Francisco. A dozen exits from a situation that had no good solutions. She'd known this moment was coming since the night she handed Jae-hyun that note. Had known that choosing truth over orders meant consequences that couldn't be negotiated away with evidence or explanations. "I testified to Prosecutor Kang this morning," she said. "Gave him everything I had. The investigation files, the forensic analysis, my independent conclusions about the conspiracy. That testimony is now part of the Korean criminal case. If you arrest me, if you discredit me publicly, you undermine that case and potentially let a corrupt billionaire walk free because the evidence chain is compromised." The female agent's expression didn't change. "Not our problem. Our problem is an agent who went rogue, ignored protocols, and created an international incident. The Korean investigation can proceed without your testimony. They have documents, videos, financial records. They don't need a disgraced American operative telling them what it all means." "Except I'm the one who found those documents," Zara countered. "I'm the one who connected Baiko Investments to the offshore accounts. I'm the one who extracted the video files from encrypted servers. My testimony establishes chain of custody, authentication methodology, forensic validity. Without me, half their evidence is just data without provenance." The male agent checked his phone, received a message, nodded slightly. "We've been authorized to offer you a deal. Resign effective immediately, sign a non-disclosure agreement covering the entire Seoul operation, and disappear quietly into private sector work. In exchange, we don't press criminal charges, and we don't publicly discredit your investigation. And if I refuse, then we arrest you for obstruction, leak that your investigation was unauthorized, and make sure every news outlet knows that the evidence against Seo Myung-ho comes from a rogue agent with credibility issues. You go to prison, he walks free, and the system you tried to fight wins anyway." Zara felt the trap close. Not with violence or drama, but with bureaucratic precision. Institutional self-preservation disguised as reasonable compromise. She could fight this publicly, could refuse to resign, could force them to arrest her, and make a spectacle that might attract media attention. But public fights required allies, resources, platforms she didn't have. She was one woman against an organization with decades of practice making inconvenient operatives disappear into legal warfare and reputation destruction. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Prosecutor Kang here. Your testimony is on record, authenticated, and admissible, regardless of your employment status. The evidence stands. Whatever happens with your organization, the case against Seo Myung-ho is solid. Thank you for your service to justice. She showed the agents the text. My testimony is already recorded and authenticated. The case doesn't need me anymore. So your leverage is just punishment disguised as pragmatism. Call it whatever you want, the female agent said. You have 60 seconds to decide. Resign quietly or get arrested publicly. Your idealism, our patience is gone. Zara thought about her father, who'd fought for 2 years and lost everything. Thought about Jae-hyun, who'd chosen truth even knowing it would blow up his family legacy. Thought about Mrs. Hong, who'd finally broken 40 years of silence because staying quiet had become unbearable. Thought about all the people who fought systems bigger than themselves and lost everything except the knowledge they'd tried. I'll resign, she said, on one condition. Yes, I am. Because if you arrest me, I call every journalist I know and give interviews about how our organization prioritizes political convenience over criminal justice. I detail every case where we've looked the other way because the target had connections. Every investigation we've buried because it was diplomatically inconvenient. I burn the entire operation on my way down. The agents exchanged glances, calculating whether she was bluffing, whether the damage would be worth preventing. What's your condition? The woman asked finally. My personnel file, Zara said. Doesn't mention Seoul. Doesn't mention Seo Group. Official reason for resignation is personal circumstances, effective immediately. No black marks, no flags that prevent me from future employment, no subtle sabotage that follows me for the rest of my career. I disappear quietly. You get your clean resolution, and nobody needs to know about the 2 years I spent building cases your political appointees were too cowardly to prosecute. 60 seconds of tense silence. The male agent made a call, spoke in low tones, listened, hung up. Agreed. Resignation papers will reflect personal circumstances, no disciplinary notation. You sign the NDA, you keep quiet about operational specifics, and we part ways professionally. And the criminal charges? Disappear if you do, the woman said. Resurface if you don't keep quiet. It was the best deal she was going to get. Survival in exchange for silence. Freedom in exchange for complicity in the system's self-protection. She could refuse on principle, could choose the noble path of public resistance and criminal prosecution, could become a martyr for the idea that institutions should care more about justice than reputation. But martyrdom didn't pay rent or rebuild burned careers. And sometimes survival was the only victory available to people who fought systems designed to destroy them. I'll sign, Zara said. Where? They escorted her to a private room in the airport's administrative wing. Windowless, fluorescent lighting, the kind of space where negotiations happened outside public view. The resignation papers were already prepared, probably drafted days ago when her superiors realized she wasn't coming back voluntarily. She read every clause. Standard non-disclosure language, confidentiality agreements, penalties for violation that ranged from civil litigation to criminal prosecution. Her career reduced to 6 pages of legal terminology, designed to ensure she'd never tell anyone what she'd learned about institutional corruption from the inside. She signed with her own pen, not the one they offered, a small act of defiance that meant nothing legally, but everything symbolically. Congratulations, Miss Carter, the female agent said without warmth. You're unemployed. Try not to make it our problem again. They left her in the room with copies of the paperwork and a reminder that the NDA carried criminal penalties if violated. The door closed. She was alone with the wreckage of the career she'd built, the principles she'd compromised, and the knowledge that she'd chosen survival over martyrdom, because sometimes survival was the only form of resistance that lasted long enough to matter. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. "This is Park Jin-woo. Mrs. Hong gave me your number. I wanted to say thank you. My daughter's scholarship is safe. Mr. SEO confirmed the foundation will continue, expand actually, because you helped expose the people who wanted to eliminate it. You saved something that matters to people you'll never meet. That should count for something." Zara stared at the message, feeling something crack open in her chest. Not quite redemption, not quite vindication, but the beginning of understanding that justice wasn't always visible in headlines or criminal convictions. Sometimes it was a scholarship that continued, a company that restructured, a system that got slightly less corrupt because one person refused to stay quiet. She texted back, "Thank you for telling me. Take care of your daughter. And tell Mr. SEO to build something worth the cost." At 2:47 p.m., Zara Carter boarded a flight to San Francisco, unemployed, blacklisted from intelligence work, legally prohibited from discussing the case that had defined her last 3 months. She'd lost her career, her reputation within the organization, and any chance of ever working in corporate investigation again. But Seo Myung-ho was in custody. Billions in stolen assets were being recovered. A company was being restructured around transparency instead of theft. And somewhere in Seoul, a man she'd met with a handwritten note was trying to build an empire that deserved the name his grandfather had given it. As the plane lifted off, Seoul disappearing below in a grid of lights and ambition, Zara allowed herself to believe that survival and victory weren't always different things. Sometimes they were just the same thing from different angles. And sometimes walking away was the only way to win. 3 weeks after his uncle's arrest, Jae-hyun found the letter in his mother's private office. The room had been sealed since her death 18 months ago. Her assistant had boxed the personal items, archived the professional files, and locked the door as if preserving a moment in time. Jae-hyun had avoided entering for months, unable to face the physical evidence of her absence. But the prosecutor's investigation required complete document review, which meant unsealing every office, every archive, every space where evidence might hide. Mrs. Hong had offered to supervise the process, to spare him the emotional weight of sorting through his mother's belongings. He'd insisted on doing it himself. The office was exactly as she'd left it. Traditional Korean aesthetic, mixed with modern efficiency. A low wooden desk facing windows that overlooked the Han River. Calligraphy scrolls on the walls with messages about integrity and perseverance. Her reading glasses still sat on the desk, next to a fountain pen she'd preferred over modern technology. The letter was in the bottom drawer, sealed in an envelope with his name written in her precise handwriting. For Jae-hyun, when you're ready to know. He opened it with shaking hands. The letter was dated 6 weeks before she died. My beloved son, if you're reading this, it means I ran out of time to tell you face to face what I've discovered about our family's company. I'm writing this down because I need you to understand that what's coming, the pressure, the stress, the battles that will eventually kill me, weren't accidents. They were orchestrated. Your uncle has been stealing from this company for at least 15 years. I have evidence, partial, incomplete, but enough to know the scope is massive. I've been documenting it quietly, knowing that if I accuse him publicly without irrefutable proof, he'll destroy me politically before I can destroy him legally. I thought I had more time. I thought I could build the case carefully, present it to the board when every piece was in place, force accountability before the damage became irreparable. I was wrong. The stress of fighting him on every front while pretending I don't know what he's really doing, it's destroying me faster than I anticipated. My doctor says my heart is failing. Stress-induced cardiomyopathy, she calls it. I call it death by conspiracy, because that's what it is. Your uncle isn't killing me with a weapon. He's killing me with pressure, manufactured crises, strategic isolation, the 1,000 cuts of institutional warfare. I'm telling you this now because I need you to finish what I couldn't. The evidence I've collected is hidden in 3 places. My personal safe, combination is your grandfather's birth year, Mrs. Hong's archive, she knows where, and a secure server I've maintained outside company systems, access codes with my lawyer. When the time comes, and it will come, Because your uncle won't stop until he controls everything. Use this evidence. Expose him. Dismantle what he's built. And then rebuild this company into what your grandfather actually wanted. Something that creates value instead of extracting it. Something that serves people instead of using them. I know what I'm asking is impossible. I know it means fighting your own family, risking everything you've built, becoming the person who destroys the CO name in order to save what it actually means. But impossible is just difficult stretched across time, and you're strong enough for difficult. Be better than your uncle. Be better than me. I stayed quiet too long, moved too carefully, died with evidence still hidden because I was afraid of losing control. Don't make my mistakes. When you have enough truth to matter, burn everything down and build something honest from the ashes. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry I'm leaving you to finish this alone. Noma. Jae-hyun read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face, hands trembling so badly he could barely hold the paper. She'd known. For years, she'd known what his uncle was doing, had been building a case, had died trying to expose him. And he'd watched it happen without understanding, had attributed her stress to normal corporate pressures, had believed the narrative that she was simply overwhelmed by the demands of modern business. His uncle hadn't just stolen money. He'd murdered her through systematic psychological destruction, knowing exactly what the stress would do, orchestrating her death as carefully as he'd orchestrated the embezzlement. Mrs. Hong appeared in the doorway, saw his face, understood immediately. You found her letter. She knew, Jae-hyun said, voice breaking. She knew everything, and she died trying to prove it. She did, Mrs. Hong confirmed gently. And she made me promise to give you the evidence when you were strong enough to use it without being destroyed by it. She didn't want you fighting her war. She wanted you fighting your own, when you were ready. I wasn't ready, Jae-hyun said. I needed someone else to hand me a note and force me to see what was right in front of me. Your mother didn't predict Zara Carter, Mrs. Hong said. But I think she'd appreciate that it took another woman who'd lost her father to corruption to make you understand what it feels like to watch family destroyed by institutional theft. Jae-hyun carefully folded the letter, held it like the sacred thing it was. His mother's final testimony, her last act of resistance, the evidence that her death wasn't surrender, but sacrifice. The prosecutor needs to see this, he said. It establishes that my mother was investigating the embezzlement before she died. It turns her death from unfortunate medical event to possible manslaughter by psychological means. Can you prove manslaughter? Mrs. Hong asked quietly. Probably not in criminal court, Jae-hyun admitted. But in the public narrative? In the story people tell about why she died and who's responsible? Yes. My uncle killed her as surely as if he'd poisoned her coffee. Everyone will know that now. He stood, letter in hand, his mother's reading glasses catching the light on the desk. Mrs. Hong, I need you to help me access the other evidence she mentioned. Her safe, your archives, the secure server. Whatever she collected before she died. I want it added to the prosecutor's case. Consider it done, Mrs. Hong said. And Mr. Seo? Your mother would be proud you finished her fight. That matters more than you know. At 4:23 p.m., Jae-hyun delivered the letter to Prosecutor Kang's office, along with the additional evidence his mother had hidden across 3 locations. Transaction records dating back 15 years, board meeting minutes where his uncle had blocked her reform proposals, medical records showing the progression of her stress-induced heart condition, email exchanges where she'd tried to raise concerns and been systematically dismissed. The narrative shifted again. Now the case wasn't just corporate embezzlement. It was a pattern of institutional abuse that had resulted in a woman's death. Kang read the letter twice. This changes everything. We can't prove criminal manslaughter. There's no evidence he directly caused her death. But we can prove systematic harassment, obstruction of oversight, and conspiracy to conceal crimes that your mother was actively investigating. In combination with the embezzlement charges, we're looking at decades of prison time. Good, Jae-hyun said flatly, because he doesn't deserve to walk free after what he did to her. The letter was released to media outlets the next day, by mutual agreement, because public pressure sometimes achieves what legal processes cannot. The headlines transformed overnight. Late CEO's letter reveals years-long fight against embezzlement. Impossible is just difficult stretched across time. Murdered CEO's final message to son. SEO matriarch died investigating uncle's crimes. Letter details systematic harassment. Public sympathy swung decisively toward Jae-hyun and his mother. The narrative became a woman who died fighting corruption, a son who'd finished her mission, an uncle whose crimes included not just theft, but the destruction of anyone who threatened to expose him. At 9 p.m., Jae-hyun sat alone in his mother's office, her letter on the desk, her reading glasses beside it. The Han River flowing below like time refusing to stop even when everything else had shattered. His phone rang. Zara's number, calling from San Francisco for the first time since she'd left Seoul. "I saw the news," she said without preamble. "Your mother's letter. I'm so sorry, Jae-hyun. I can't imagine what it feels like to discover she knew all along. It feels like I failed her," he said quietly. "She spent years fighting him alone, and I didn't even notice she was fighting." "You noticed when it mattered," Zara replied. "She built the foundation. You finished the structure. That's not failure. That's collaboration across time. She'd understand that." "How are you?" he asked, needing to think about something other than his own grief. "Unemployed. Technically unemployable in my field. Living off savings while I figure out what comes next." Her voice carried wry humor. "Turns out burning your career for principles doesn't come with severance pay or job references." "I could hire you," Jae-hyun offered. "The company needs someone to rebuild our compliance systems from the ground up. Someone who knows how to find corruption before it becomes institutional." Zara was quiet for a long moment. "That's generous. But I'm not sure I'm ready to go back to corporate investigation. Not yet. Maybe not ever." "Then what will you do?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But I'm starting to think that's okay. Maybe not knowing is better than following a script someone else wrote for you." They talked for another 20 minutes, about the trial preparation, about the board restructuring Jae-hyun was proposing, about the strange aftermath of winning a war that cost everything to fight. When they finally hung up, Jae-hyun felt less alone than he had in weeks. His mother's words echoed in his mind. Impossible is just difficult stretched across time. He was building something difficult. But time was on his side now. 6 months after the arrests, Lee Hwa-young requested a private meeting with Jae-hyun. They met at a cafe in Bukchon, traditional neighborhood with hanok houses and narrow streets far from corporate towers and media attention. Hwa-young arrived precisely on time, her pearl necklace noticeably absent. The first time Jae-hyun had seen her without it since their broken engagement. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sitting across from him with the careful posture of someone navigating uncertain social territory. "I know things have been complicated between our families." "That's diplomatic," Jae-hyun replied. "Your father voted to keep the independent audit moving forward. That took courage, given the business relationships at stake." "It took my testimony," Hwa-young corrected quietly. "When I told him what I'd overheard, what I knew about your uncle's conspiracy, he had a choice. Protect his business interests, or protect his integrity. It took him 3 days to decide, but he chose correctly. And you? How have you been?" She smiled slightly, genuine emotion breaking through years of practiced corporate expressions. "Free, actually. I resigned from my family's board last month. Took a position with a non-profit that works on corporate transparency reforms. The pay is terrible, the work is exhausting, and I've never been happier." "Your family must be thrilled," Jae-hyun said dryly. "My family thinks I've lost my mind," Hwa-young replied. "But my grandmother, the one who gave me the pearls, she called me last week. Said she was proud I'd finally stopped wearing jewelry I didn't choose and started living a life I actually wanted." They ordered tea, fell into conversation that felt different from every interaction they'd had during their arranged engagement. Real instead of performed, honest instead of strategic. Hwa-young talked about the nonprofit work, about learning to use her Chibal insider knowledge to help reformers understand how corruption actually operated at institutional levels. Jae-hyun talked about the company restructuring, the resistance from old guard board members, the slow progress of building something different. Do you regret it? Hua Young asked after a while. Exposing your uncle? Blowing up your family? Choosing the hard path? Jae-hyun thought about his mother's letter, about Zara's note that had started everything, about the cost of truth measured in destroyed relationships and rebuilt reputations. Every day, and also never. It's possible to regret the cost without regretting the choice. That's remarkably mature, Hua Young said. That's remarkably exhausting, Jae-hyun corrected. But it's honest. And after years of living in constructed narratives, honest feels important, even when it's difficult. Hua Young reached into her bag, pulled out a small wrapped package, set it on the table between them. I wanted to give you this. A gift, or maybe an apology, or maybe just an acknowledgement of what we both survived. He opened it carefully. Inside, a fountain pen, elegant and simple, nothing like his grandfather's heavy Mont Blanc, but beautiful in its own right. For signing the documents that matter, Hua Young said. Not the contracts that preserve empires, but the reforms that rebuild them into something worth preserving. Your mother would want you to have something that's yours, not inherited. Jae-hyun felt his throat tighten. Thank you. And thank you, Hua Young replied, for showing me what it looks like when someone chooses the right side, even knowing they'll lose everything. I needed to see that before I could do it myself. They finished their tea, parted with the kind of mutual respect that comes from surviving the same war on different fronts. Jae-hyun walked back through Bukchon's narrow streets, the fountain pen in his pocket, feeling like something had shifted, not healed, but transformed into a different kind of weight. His phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Hong. Mr. CEO, the final board vote on governance reforms is tomorrow at 10 a.m. Are you ready? He typed back. As ready as I'll ever be. Thank you for everything, Mrs. Hong. Her response came immediately. Your mother prepared you for this, even if you didn't know it at the time. Trust that preparation. And sir, she would be so proud of who you've become. That evening, Jae-hyun sat in his mother's old office, now his office, though he'd changed very little about it, and wrote 2 letters. The first was to the employees, explaining the governance reforms he'd be proposing. Independent board majority, external audits, whistleblower protections, profit-sharing structures that distributed company success to the people who actually created it. The reforms his mother had tried to implement before his uncle blocked them at every turn. The second letter was shorter, addressed to Zara Carter in San Francisco. Dear Zara, tomorrow the board votes on whether to implement the reforms that will turn this company into something different, something that might actually deserve the name my grandfather gave it. I'm terrified they'll reject everything and I'll have fought this entire war only to discover the institution is too broken to rebuild. But then I remember that you handed me a note at the moment I was about to sign away everything, and that single act of courage from a stranger changed the entire trajectory of this story. So I'm writing to say thank you, and to tell you that whatever happens tomorrow, you were right. People who fight for something beyond profit are harder to break than people who only fight for themselves. I hope you've found whatever comes next for you. I hope it's honest, difficult, and worth the cost. Jae-hyun. He sent it without second-guessing, then turned off his computer and sat in the quiet office watching Seoul's lights reflect off the Han River. Tomorrow would determine whether his mother's sacrifice had mattered, whether justice could actually reshape institutions, whether fighting was worth the cost even when victory looked like ruins. But tonight, he allowed himself to believe that impossible was just difficult stretched across time. And he'd already proven he was strong enough for difficult. The boardroom at 9:47 a.m. felt like a courtroom waiting for verdict. 7 board members, restructured after the arrests. 4 new independents Jae-hyun had recruited. 3 holdovers from the old guard who'd survived the investigation by proving they hadn't known about the embezzlement. Director Lee Sang-min sat at his usual position, expression professionally neutral. Mrs. Hong stood near the door with documents prepared, her presence both witness and reminder of institutional memory that refused to stay silent anymore. Jae-hyun stood at the head of the table, his mother's letter framed on the wall behind him now. Not hidden, not archived, but present as the foundation for everything that came next. "Thank you for coming," he began, voice steady despite the stakes. "Today we vote on governance reforms that will fundamentally change how this company operates. I'm not going to pretend these changes will be easy, or that they won't reduce short-term profitability, or that they won't make us less competitive in markets that reward the kind of ruthlessness my uncle practiced." He activated the presentation. Not glossy corporate propaganda, but honest numbers showing exactly what the reforms would cost and what they would gain. Independent board majority means family control gets diluted. External audits mean our financials will be scrutinized by people with no loyalty to the SEO name. Whistleblower protections mean employees can report problems without fear of retaliation. Profit sharing means executives take less so workers receive more. One of the old guard directors, Kim Sung-hoon, raised his hand. "Mr. Seo, with respect, these reforms sound admirable in principle, but disastrous in practice. Our competitors don't operate under these constraints. We'll lose market share, investor confidence, executive talent. We'll lose executives who only care about extraction," Jae-hyun interrupted. "We'll lose investors who prioritize quarterly returns over sustainable growth. We'll lose market share in sectors built on exploitation. And yes, that will be painful. But my mother died fighting to prove that companies can be profitable without being predatory. I'm proposing we actually test that theory." Another director, one of the new independents, spoke up. "The employees are watching this vote. They've seen the evidence of embezzlement, seen what happens when leadership prioritizes profit over people. If we reject these reforms, we tell them nothing has actually changed except the names on the organizational chart." "And the shareholders?" Kim asked. "What do we tell them when stock prices drop because we're voluntarily constraining ourselves while competitors aren't?" "We tell them the truth," Jae-hyun replied, "that we're rebuilding institutional integrity, that long-term stability matters more than short-term gains, and that companies built on sustainable practices outlast companies built on theft. My grandfather built this empire with principles, flawed, incomplete principles shaped by war and survival, but principles nonetheless. We're not abandoning that legacy. We're finally living up to it." Director Lee stood, commanding attention through simple presence. "I've been on this board for 23 years. I watched Mr. Seo's grandfather build this company, watched his father try to maintain it, watched his mother fight to reform it. And I watched Seo Myung-ho slowly poison everything they built because we, the board, failed in our oversight duties." He looked around the table. "We failed because we prioritized convenience over accountability, because we trusted family loyalty more than institutional checks, because we convinced ourselves that profit justified any compromise. Mr. SEO is proposing we stop failing. The question isn't whether these reforms are perfect. They're not. The question is whether we have the courage to choose difficult integrity over easy corruption." Silence settled over the boardroom, the kind of silence that holds entire futures in balance. "Let's vote," Jae-hyun said. "All in favor of implementing comprehensive governance reforms as outlined?" 4 hands rose immediately. The new independent directors who'd been recruited specifically because they believed institutions could change. Director Lee's hand rose next. Slowly, deliberately, a man who'd decided that loyalty to principles mattered more than loyalty to comfortable traditions. 2 hands remained down, Kim Sung-hoon and Park Jin-soo, the old guard who couldn't imagine operating differently than they had for decades. 6 votes in favor, 2 against. The reforms passed. Jae-hyun exhaled, realizing he'd been holding his breath. The motion carries. Implementation begins immediately. Mrs. Hong, please distribute the detailed timeline to all department heads. We're restructuring this company into something my mother would recognize. The meeting dissolved into procedural discussions. Timelines, communication strategies, investor relations. The machinery of institutional transformation grinding into motion. But underneath the logistics, something fundamental had shifted. A company choosing transparency over secrecy, accountability over control, sustainability over extraction. After the boardroom cleared, Director Lee approached Jae-hyun privately. "Your mother tried this exact restructuring 6 years ago. Your uncle blocked it, convinced me and others that it was too radical, too risky. I've regretted that vote every day since reading her letter. Then help me make sure it actually works this time, Jae-hyun said. Consider it my penance, Lee replied. And Mr. SEO? Your ex-fiancé called me last week. Said the nonprofit she works for is looking for corporate partners willing to pilot transparency initiatives. I suggested they talk to you. Hwa Young is forming alliances. Jae-hyun smiled slightly. She's learned strategy better than we gave her credit for. She learned survival, Lee corrected. And sometimes survival means choosing the side that might actually build something lasting instead of the side that's just defending what's already dying. At 2:34 p.m., Jae-hyun received an email from Zara, her first direct message since his letter. Jae-hyun, congratulations on the vote. I saw the news. SEO Group implements radical governance reforms, made it to international business press. People are calling it either revolutionary or corporate suicide, which means you're probably doing something right. I wanted you to know I've accepted a position with an anti-corruption consultancy based in DC. They work with companies trying to rebuild after institutional failures. Basically, my sole experience turned into a marketable skill set. Who knew burning your career could be a resume builder? I'm coming to Seoul next month for a regional conference. Would you have time for coffee? I'd like to see what you've built with the wreckage we created together. Z'd, Jae-hyun typed back immediately. Coffee sounds perfect. And Zara? Thank you for that note. For everything that came after it. I wouldn't have had the courage to fight if you hadn't shown me what fighting looked like. Her response came 3 minutes later. You would have fought eventually. I just accelerated the timeline. See you next month. Try not to restructure any more empires before I get there. He smiled, genuine, exhausted, the expression of someone who'd survived a war and was beginning to believe peace might actually be possible. Mrs. Hong knocked on his office door. Sir, Prosecutor Kang called. The trial date has been set, 8 months from now. He says the evidence is comprehensive enough that conviction is almost certain. Your uncle will likely receive a sentence of 20+ years. And Kim? Already cooperating for a reduced sentence. He's testifying against everyone involved in the offshore networks. The prosecutor says it's the largest chaebol corruption case in Korean history. Jae-hyun nodded slowly. Justice, when it finally arrived, looked like paperwork and trial dates and years of prison time that could never actually resurrect the people who died fighting corruption. But it was something. It was accountability, when accountability had seemed impossible. Mrs. Hong, he said, I'm creating a new position, Chief Integrity Officer, reporting directly to the board with authority to investigate any level of company operations. I'd like you to take it. Not as my secretary, but as the institutional guardian my mother tried to be. Mrs. Hong was quiet for a long moment. I'm 68 years old, Mr. Seo. That's a position for someone building a career, not ending one. That's a position for someone who spent 40 years watching how institutions fail and learning exactly how to prevent it, Jae-hyun corrected. You don't need to build a career. You need to build a system that outlasts you. Will you do it? She smiled. Small. Genuine. The expression of someone who'd been waiting 40 years to be asked the right question. Your mother would have my head if I said no. I accept. That evening, Jae-hyun stood in front of his mother's framed letter, reading words he'd memorized but still needed to see written down. Impossible is just difficult stretched across time, and you're strong enough for difficult. He'd been strong enough. Barely. Expensively. With help from strangers who became allies, and allies who became family. But strong enough. Outside his window, Seoul glittered with the same ambition that had always defined it. But now, in this office, in this company, ambition meant building something honest instead of just extracting value from whatever could be exploited. It wasn't victory. Not yet. But it was progress. And progress, stretched across time, eventually looked like transformation. 1 month later, Zara Carter returned to Seoul. Jae-hyun met her at a cafe in Itaewon, neutral territory, far enough from corporate headquarters that they could be 2 people having coffee instead of CEO and investigator discussing the conspiracy that had almost destroyed them both. She looked different. Less exhausted, more grounded, wearing a leather jacket instead of consultant gray. The worn brown briefcase was gone, replaced by a simple backpack that suggested someone who'd learned to travel lighter. "You cut your hair shorter," Jae-hyun observed. "You look like you've slept in the past month," Zara countered. "That's new." They ordered coffee, fell into easy conversation about everything except the conspiracy, until finally Zara asked the question that mattered. "How's it actually going? The reforms, the restructuring, the rebuilding?" Jae-hyun considered how to summarize transformation that was still unfolding. "Hard. Every day someone resists a change because it's unfamiliar or unprofitable or just different from how we've always done things. But we're moving forward. Employee surveys show trust is increasing. External auditors say we're setting new standards for chaebol transparency. International partners are watching to see if reform is actually possible or just performance. And you? How are you doing with all of it? I'm learning that leadership isn't about controlling everything. It's about building systems that work even when you're not personally managing every detail." He smiled slightly. "Your investigator training is showing up in corporate strategy now. Mrs. Hong keeps catching me looking for hidden corruption in departments that are probably fine." "Healthy paranoia," Zara said approvingly. "After what you survived, a little vigilance is reasonable." They talked for 2 hours. About the trial preparation, about Zara's new work with companies trying to rebuild institutional integrity, about the strange aftermath of fighting wars that couldn't really be won, only survived with varying degrees of honor intact. "I wanted to tell you something," Zara said as they prepared to leave. "My father's case, the one that destroyed him when I was 19, they're reopening it. The prosecutor saw news about your uncle's conviction and realized the tactics were identical. They're investigating whether the CEO who framed my father was part of the same offshore networks your uncle used." Jae-hyun felt something tighten in his chest. "Zara, that's 15 years too late," she finished. "My father died before his name could be cleared. But it matters that the truth is finally coming out, even if he's not here to see it. It matters that fighting your uncle's conspiracy is helping expose others. Justice delayed isn't justice denied. It's just justice arriving too slowly for the people who needed it most. I'm glad something good is coming from all of this," Jae-hyun said quietly. "Everything good comes from people choosing difficult honesty over easy lies," Zara replied. "You taught me that. Or maybe we taught each other." They stood to leave, and for a moment the air between them held something unspoken. Not quite romance, not quite partnership, but the deep recognition of people who'd fought the same war and survived it together. "If you're ever in DC," Zara said, "or if you need someone to audit your compliance systems and make sure no new uncles are building shadow empires, I'll call," Jae-hyun promised. "And Zara, that note you gave me at the gala, I still have it, framed in my office next to my mother's letter. They're bookends, where I almost lost everything and where I learned why saving it mattered." Zara smiled, genuine warmth breaking through investigator discipline. "Build something worth the cost, Jae-hyun. That's all any of us can do." She left for her conference, and Jae-hyun walked back through Seoul's streets feeling something he hadn't felt in months. Hope that wasn't weighed down by exhaustion, ambition that wasn't corrupted by desperation, the belief that institutions could actually change if the right people fought long enough. 18 months after the conspiracy's exposure, the Educational Foundation's annual gala was smaller than the Shilla Hotel event where everything had started, deliberately so, because Jae-hyun had learned that ostentation often masked emptiness. 200 people filled the hall. Scholarship recipients, their families, foundation staff, board members who'd survived the restructuring, and a few journalists covering what had become Seoul's most watched corporate transformation story. Mrs. Hong, now Chief Integrity Officer, gave the opening remarks with the quiet authority of someone who'd spent 40 years preparing for this role. Park Jin-woo, promoted to Chief Technology Officer, presented the new transparency dashboard that made company financials accessible to all employees. Lee Hwa-young, representing her nonprofit, announced a partnership that would help other chaebols implement similar reforms. And Jae-hyun stood at the side of the stage, holding the fountain pen Hwa-young had given him. watching something his mother had died trying to build finally take shape in the world. His phone buzzed. A text from Zara, who couldn't attend but had sent a message timed for the event. Remember when this seemed impossible? Turns out, impossible was just difficult stretched across time. Proud of you. Zed. When it was his turn to speak, Jae-hyun walked to the podium with his mother's framed letter visible on the screen behind him. 18 months ago, he began. Someone I'd never met handed me a note that said I'd been betrayed. That note started a chain of events that destroyed my family's reputation, exposed billions in theft, sent my uncle to prison, and forced this company to confront the difference between legacy and integrity. He paused, letting the weight of that history settle over the room. My mother spent the last years of her life fighting to make this company something more than an extraction machine disguised as a family business. She died before she could finish that fight. But she left behind a letter that said something I think about every day. Impossible is just difficult stretched across time, and you're strong enough for difficult. The room was silent, except for the rustle of formal clothes and the quiet breathing of 200 people waiting for the moral of a story still being written. We're not finished transforming this company, Jae-hyun continued. Every day brings new resistance, new challenges, new moments where choosing integrity over profit feels like choosing to lose. But we're proving that companies can be profitable without being predatory, that transparency doesn't destroy value, and that the hardest side, the side that requires courage instead of just capital, is the only side worth fighting for. He held up the fountain pen Hwa Young had given him. This pen was a gift from someone who taught me that choosing the right side means losing everything you thought defined you so you can build something that actually matters. And these scholarships, he gestured to the recipients in the audience, are proof that the right side wins, eventually, if you're stubborn enough to keep fighting even when victory looks like ruins. Applause filled the hall. Genuine, earned, the sound of people who'd watched an institution choose transformation over preservation. After the speeches, Jae-hyun stood near the windows overlooking the Han River, the same view from his mother's old office. Director Lee approached, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. Your mother would be impossible to live with right now, Lee said, offering 1 glass. She'd be critiquing every detail, demanding faster progress, asking why we haven't reformed 10 other chaebols yet. Jae-hyun laughed. She'd also be crying proud tears when nobody was looking. That too, Lee agreed. The trial verdict came through this afternoon. Your uncle received 23 years, no possibility of early parole. Kim got 12 years for cooperation. The offshore banking partners are facing charges in 3 countries. Justice, when it finally arrived, looked like numbers and years that could never actually resurrect the dead or undo the damage. But it was something. It was accountability when accountability had seemed impossible. And the company? Jae-hyun asked. Stock price stabilized after the initial drop. International partners are expressing renewed confidence. Employee retention is at record highs. The reforms are working. Slowly, expensively, but working. You've proven that doing the right thing doesn't always destroy you. Sometimes it just transforms you into something different. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights reflect off the river, soul glittering with the same ambition that had always defined it. But now, for this company at least, ambition meant building something honest. Jae-hyun's phone buzzed 1 more time. Another message from Zara. P.S. That note I gave you. You've been betrayed. Meet me in the back. I've written hundreds of reports, testified in dozens of cases, but that's still the best 9 words I've ever written. Sometimes changing everything starts with just telling someone the truth they need to hear. Keep telling that truth. Zed. He typed back. And sometimes survival means trusting someone you have every reason not to trust. Thank you for being that person, for everything that came after that note. The gala continued around him. Scholarship recipients sharing their stories, families celebrating opportunities that corruption had almost destroyed, employees witnessing proof that their company could actually be what it claimed to be. It wasn't a perfect ending. There were still battles to fight, still resistance to overcome, still moments when choosing integrity over profit felt like choosing to fail. But it was honest. It was difficult. And it was worth the cost. because impossible was just difficult stretched across time, and Jae-hyun had learned he was strong enough for difficult. The city lights glittered below like a promise that transformation, no matter how painful, was always possible if you were brave enough to burn down what needed burning and build something true from the ashes. His mother's letter hung in his office, a reminder of where he'd come from. Zara's note hung beside it, a reminder of the stranger who'd forced him to see what was right in front of him. And the fountain pen sat on his desk, ready to sign the documents that would keep building something different, something that might actually deserve the legacy his grandfather had tried to create, and his mother had died defending. The war was over. The work was just beginning. And for the first time in 18 months, Jae-hyun believed that the hardest side, the side built on truth instead of convenience, on transparency instead of control, on difficult integrity instead of easy corruption, was finally winning. Not because it was easy, but because people who fought for something beyond profit were always harder to break than people who only fought for themselves. And that truth, stretched across time, eventually looked like victory.